Welcome to Tales from SYL Ranch, where everyone is entitled to my opinion. And I'm Bill Stone. Well, tonight on Tales from SYL Ranch, we have our usual live call-in. You can call me on Skype. This is, of course, a live stream, so even if I'm not able to get to you via Skype, you can feel free to call me and or talk to me in chat about anything you want. You can ask me any question, political, social, the virus whose name I dare not mention without YouTube deranking and suspending or deleting my account, the ongoing terrorist attacks throughout the United States, the systemic racism against African Americans, if it exists, police brutality, or even things pertaining to science fiction, fantasy, horror, superhero, and other related genres. I am happy to answer each and every question in as much detail and as truthfully as I can. There are some subjects that I won't get into because they're kind of personal, and I'll tell you if that happens. But pretty much anything else is fair game. I will get to as many of my viewers as I can, with, of course, the understanding that I don't want my stream to go too much longer than about 3 hours, because it kind of takes it out of me in terms of physical. I get real tired, and it gets hard to deal with. So, the main topic tonight, and I'll have a bit of a monologue about this, is why this virus, whose name I can't mention without YouTube deranking, suspending, or deleting my account, is never going to go away. It will become medical theater, just the way that we now have airport security theater after 9/11. As you may be able to tell from watching me, I have finally given up and am wearing my glasses more or less full time. I hope that this doesn't give you bad reflections off of it. I assume that there's some kind of specialized glasses that maybe I can get, and I'm due to go in anyway, so maybe I can get a pair of specialized glasses that doesn't do as much reflection as this one does. But that's my intent, ultimately, to get into, I'm going to have to stay with these suckers because it has become to a point where I can't see necessarily what's going on in front of me. I have a very poor man's version of a teleprompter for when I do things like a monologue. And it's impossible for me to read anything useful on my chat as well. So, hey, Larry, and Jeanette, how are you guys doing tonight? I hope you're doing well this evening with our governor's fairly recent, at least since I got back from going out to my family's ranch land, having put in a statewide mandated mask order that will be the subject to some extent of my monologue a little bit later. Right now, I'm planning to just kind of vamp for a bit here until such time as we get to a point where I've got more than 3 or so concurrent viewers, which is what I'm showing now. Go into my stream settings here and my control panel that they give me here at YouTube. With any luck, next week, I will be simul streaming to YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch simultaneously. I'm really hoping to get that taken care of. I'm very nearly that now. I have a server set up in Amazon Web Services that is running Nginx, which will allow me to, it's essentially sort of a proxy server, lets you send your single stream to Nginx inside of AWS, and then it will split it off and send it out to all of these different streaming services. Probably I could do that with the bandwidth that I have coming out of my house, but why risk it? I've done Amazon Web Services as part of my job before I retired. I'm real intimately familiar with it, so why not use their bandwidth instead of mine, is my feeling. I'll send my single signal to them, and they will split it out for other services. But I haven't yet got that fully tested, so I didn't quite get to that this week. I'm hoping next week that I will. I'd be very much interested in doing it to those 3 services at the very least. Jeanette, you're saying that my glasses don't reflect bad. That's good. I'm actually keeping my head down a little bit lower. If I look up, you start to get bad reflections. If I stay down in here, it's pretty good. Jeanette says from even Larry's Light says mask forever too. That's pretty much what I'm talking about, yes. And you refuse still, you're stubborn. I'd love to refuse. Oh man, the first time I went into a convenience store and I'd forgotten the thing, I went to a local quick shop. They're a chain in this area, and stepped in there, and the guy who was running the thing, because I mean, I'd just gotten back from my family ranch land. I didn't know that the governor had put this stupid order in, and so I just got out of my car and headed straight over to the door to the quick shop, and the they have about 1,000,000 different signs, and if you walk into any convenience store, they got signs hither and yon about this, that, and the other thing on the doors. You never pay attention to it. You never pay the slightest attention to whatever the hell happens to be on their stupid signs. And so I walked in, guy stops me, points the sign, and says, in sort of under his breath, "Welcome to Nebraska, land of the stupid." And I'm like, jackass, I just got into town. Fortunately, I do have some masks in my car, so I was able to do that. But I've done something a little bit different. If you saw the thumbnail for this video, you can see the mask that I'm wearing, and I will be talking about it a little bit later. Hey, drop of truth. Well, the steampunk mask, I'm going to get into that just a little bit. Yeah. Come out of Lincoln, no masks needed. Could be. I don't know, Jeanette. I'm here in essentially dead center of Lincoln, Nebraska. So, I don't go much of any place anyway. People go on about how being cooped up is really terrible and stuff. I live with my mother for a variety of reasons, and both she and I are kind of introverts anyway. So we're kind of like, okay, we're supposed to stay home, and other people, and I'll talk about this more in a bit, but other people, of course, have had their businesses completely fail. I just recently got into my dentist for a regular cleaning, and about $1,000 worth of work. See, it turns out that the medications that I'm on for my various ailments make my mouth very dry, which is part of the reason that I drink a lot of this. It's invisible today. This Hy-Vee flavored water all the time. But that also apparently it becomes a little problematic when you're dealing with tooth decay. So now I'm also on, in addition to the 1,000 other things that I have a script for, I'm now on a prescription toothpaste. So, but I had to go in there and get about $1,000 worth of work done on my teeth because of this combination of things. So, fun. But anyhow, I just barely got in to see those guys for the first time in over 6 months. And they were doing stupid stuff. Oh, man, it was so dumb. I pull up, and there's a big sign they have out front that says, "Do not come in. Check in via phone." And then there's a phone number out front, and you call that, and you check in. Guy comes out, asks you the usual questions. Have you had any symptoms? Have you been around anybody that has symptoms? Have you been tested? Have you been around anybody that's been tested, etc.? The answer, which always is no. And then they take you in. They have, take you straight into the room, and only then can you take off your mask. And they're, of course, wearing masks and, face shields and the whole 9 yards. It's crazy. Drop Juice says, meanwhile in Australia, Victoria has mandated wearing masks when out in public. Yeah, that's kind of what the Nebraska governor did here, at least in Lincoln, mandated it. So every business that I go to, I don't know that I pay no attention to it out in public. I don't know if he's done that and gotten that stupid yet, but I don't pay attention to it in public. It's just that I keep my steampunk mask that you'll see in a minute in the car seat next to me so that I can grab it anytime I go out. So. Love my invisible water. Yes, this is totally invisible because it's green. Hence, it's the same color as my. I have a green screen behind me, and so it's the same color as my green screen. So, things disappear behind it. Ooh. Your work required masks before the governor edict. Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. Lots of places required masks at businesses, and I don't have any problem with that. If a business individually wants to have a mask, that's cool as far as I'm concerned. Drop 2 says the population density in Melbourne is about 240 people per hectare in regional Victoria, not far from me. It's 1.8 million people per hectare. Bloody idiots. Yeah. Jeanette says, my work required masks, so I'm on vacation until that's over. Yay. I don't know where you're at. I know you're from Nebraska. For the longest time, the places that were the worst hit were, well, the one that was worst hit was Grand Island. I mean, by far more cases. I haven't looked lately because, frankly, the infection rate in Nebraska is so low that I just can't care about it. But out there, I mean, they had a large meat processing plant that it kind of went through and then got into the general population. And that town's town's a city. I think it's about 100,000 or something like that. But that was the place that had the largest infections, despite the fact that Omaha is a metro area of about 1 million, and they still had more infections in this 100,000 city. It was kind of amazing. I don't know. I mean, Lincoln, for the longest time when I was paying attention to it, which is where I live, Lincoln, Nebraska, it would sit and hover around 5th or 6th in the state. The other one that was a big killer was South Sioux City, which is also not a big town, but it's part of the Sioux City, Iowa, South Sioux City, Nebraska, North Sioux City, South Dakota metro area, which is about 100,000. I don't know if they still have a working meat processing plant up there, but they did. So, but it's at a confluence of the Big Sioux and Missouri rivers, and so these three cities are kind of separated by the rivers, but they're really kind of the same place. You were prompted to get a Crohn disease test by your employers. You're still waiting on the results. I don't know for sure what a Crohn disease is on this one. You only have 1 death in your 4-county area. Why am I not shocked? Even in Lincoln here, the last time that I looked, the number of infections was less than 1% of the population, and the number of deaths was way less than 1% of the population. Again, I haven't checked it in weeks. I just stopped caring. You know, when you're just watching these numbers stay about the same for day in and day out, it's just like, this is such a small percentage of our population. I just can't care anymore. You know, and admittedly, I'm at somewhat greater risk. I'm older. I'm 55. I'm, in that tip over point, and I have diabetes, as Wilford Brimley often said. I got the diabetes, so theoretically, I'm in more of a risk. But when you've got that few people in a city of 344 some thousand in the metro area, it just, like, I'm not going to care. I'm going to fail to get too upset about that. Drop 2 says it's the middle of winter here now, and most people I know, including myself, have the sniffles, cold and flu season. Yeah, sure, absolutely. Larry, no deaths here since May. Yeah, I don't know for sure again, I haven't looked lately. It's just so small that, I mean, I don't want to, play that down for anybody that's had relatives or knows somebody or was a victim that actually died here in Lincoln. Don't want to play that down for you. I understand you've got, personal pain and stuff, but just statistically, you look at it and you go, this is just not something I care about. There are 4 million other things that I could get that would be worse, and I'm statistically more likely to get, so I can't care. Drop 2 says Crohn disease. Oh, okay. That's yes. Okay. I didn't realize that. Yes, that's a good name for it. As good as any, Crohn disease. I'm going to kind of call it on the show the virus that I cannot name for fear that YouTube will derank me even further than they already do, or disable, or completely destroy my account. They've been doing that lately. Anytime there was some doctors recently, I wish I had the video. I wish it had occurred to me to grab it first. I'm sure it's floating around out there somewhere. But I wish it had occurred to me to grab it first of some doctors who are, coming and saying, hey, wait a minute, maybe, hey, maybe some of these things we're hearing, you could think twice about. And they got yanked down, and anybody who puts them up tends to get yanked down. And if you link to it in Facebook, even if when it existed, it would get deleted. The social media is doing some very active censorship with regards to this. I watched their idiots briefly, very briefly, because I can't stand to watch any more of those testimonies before Congress or the Senate. I can't stand to watch them because they're all being done by teleconference now. And the big ones, the ones that are for social media and stuff, they have directors sitting there. They have cue cards sitting there, and they have teleprompters sitting there. You can tell. The normal people, ordinarily, you don't do like I am, sitting here talking and looking directly at a camera. That's weird behavior. People tend to look around. Looking at the camera is something that they've been coached to do, and they probably have, I can see it sometimes when they move their eyes, a teleprompter in front of them because their eyes are going from one side to the next. It's usually pretty minor. I mean, like me, when I read my poor man's teleprompter, about the only time about as far as you see my eyes move is about like this. So it's a lot, they have a better teleprompter and it's a lot more. So, I mean, it's all just so fake. It's just so fake that I can't, what's the point of watching this crap? But basically they said, we take our cues from the World Health Organization. Anything that anything says that's not in line with WHO, we just take down, we flag it, we take down. Yeah, well, and guess what, guys? This is a constantly evolving situation. Scientifically, it is constantly evolving, and so you can have different opinions about this stuff, and maybe you're both right or maybe you're both wrong. Maybe World Health Organization doesn't have it right, and so you take this stuff down, and anyway, they're being very, very proactively. You can't exactly call it censoring, but they will pull down things off of their site that amounts to censorship. Excuse me. Let's see. Had another 14 deaths in Victoria. Drop of Truth says all aged. Yes, there's a grand total of about 180 nationally since February, and a population of 24 plus million. Don't panic. Yeah. Even in my city, which is nowhere near that, I don't remember what we were at with deaths. The last time it must be higher now. We probably got 100. Maybe more. I don't know. Haven't looked. If somebody wants to look and let me know, feel free. I just have decided I'm not going to care. What's my opinion of the Garrett Foster shooting in Houston? Dalton. Hey, nice to see you, Dalton. My opinion of that shooting. It is difficult for me from this distance to tell exactly what happened. It looks to me like what probably happened was he was the guy in the pickup or whatever he was driving was probably threatened either directly with a firearm or by the fact that these people are surrounding his vehicle. And if you've watched any of the footage, you can see that they do things like tip those vehicles over, pull the drivers out, and harm them. If it's me, if I get into a situation like that, watch out, guys. I'm going to drive right through you. I'm not going to give you a chance to yank me out of my car. But that shooting, I don't know. It's hard for me to tell from this distance. It is one of those things where I wish that we had, direct footage, somebody on the ground pointing their camera and shutting up and showing us direct footage of what exactly happened, but we don't, apparently. I can tell you this, it brings us ever closer to what I assume is a looming civil war over this. I don't see us getting out of this at this point without a civil war. We have leftists who are dangerous. They're utterly intractable. You cannot reason with them. They will not be satisfied with anything less than something is impossible to give them. They will not be satisfied with anything less than policies that would be absolutely destructive, because socialism and communism always fail and kill millions in the process. And if you had any real education of that group of people, you would know this by simply looking at the 20th century. It is a textbook of those things happening. So they're intractable. They want things that cannot be given to them, and they're doing it violently. And so ultimately, I see a civil war out of this. I don't know when exactly, but at some point. I think it's just one of those things in Houston that inches us closer to civil war. Drop Truth says, Joe Biden screwed up yet another introductory sentence in a speech 2 days ago. He's senile. Yeah, oh God, yes. Yes, Joe Biden is absolutely suffering from dementia. There's no question in my mind. This is one of the few times when finding out who the Democrats are going to nominate for vice president is actually important, because Joe's senile. If they let him, and they won't, they'll come up with some excuse to, like, for the first time in my lifetime, not have presidential debates, because if they did, Joe would be totally confused and have the floor mopped with him. They couldn't pump him full of any drug that I can think of that would allow him to stay functional for any period of time. So knowing who the vice president will pick on the Democratic side, if they were to win, is important, because that person will probably be either functionally president or take over as president not too far into the Biden administration. Larry says Health Organization's always right. Yes, they're not even remotely right. I have a hard time paying much attention to either them or the CDC, particularly on this, because we're talking about a scientific situation that is constantly evolving. What happens, what we think works okay one day may not but be what we think works scientifically 2 days later. It is a constantly evolving situation. And so with that in mind, you can't just go, oh, okay, they're absolutely right today. You can say, okay, well, this is what they think today. Tomorrow it may change. It's fluid, it's evolving, we don't know. What I can tell you is that in reality, the fatality rate, at least in the U.S., is under 5%. And the people who get infections, frankly, are older people, typically who have pre-existing conditions. And so for me, I have a pre-existing condition. I'm a little older. I'm not as old as most of the people who are getting it, but I'm just going to fail to care. It just isn't that big a deal to me, Dalton says the shooter actually called the cops within 5 minutes of the shooting. Yeah, again, I don't know quite what to think about that. What it looks to me like more than anything else is an escalation toward this civil war. I don't know for sure. I don't know what to think about it. It is too far away from me, and I don't have any direct footage of it. I do not trust the press to tell me anything truthful. Nothing you see in the press is real. Nothing. And that is a true statement. So I don't trust the press to tell me anything that's real. I much prefer to see footage, typically from someone who was on the ground, long enough to be able to see both the context before and after a specific event, and preferably with the individual holding the camera saying nothing. This is the definition for me of a good citizen journalist. You point your camera and you shut up. We do not need you or any other talking head telling us what to think or what sort of conclusions to make. We can figure that out for ourselves just by watching the video, but it needs to be something that's in context. 2 seconds leaving out what led to it and what maybe came after it is, kind of important to have. And the press, well, they'll leave out anything they want. They edit anything they want just to make it look bad. Typically for Trump or anybody on the right, they do it to look bad. Drop 2 says if Hillary or Michael Michelle becomes VP, Biden's life expectancy will be counted in days, if not hours. Yeah, I don't know who he's going to do. This would be Hillary's last possible time that she could grab the brass ring. I don't know if they'll do that or not. One thing about the Democrats is they have a pretty good track record of not going with people who failed once before. Pretty good track record for that. So I don't know that they'll do her. They'll probably do somebody else crazy. In all reality, I think that Hillary is probably too centrist for them now. She is probably too centrist. She's also incredibly... she was the most corrupt sitting politician to ever run for presidency, at least in my lifetime. But she's also probably too centrist for them. The Democratic Party has veered very, very far left, such that I've said it before, I would prefer to vote for Joe Jorgensen, the Libertarian candidate, but I feel like I'm going to have to vote for Trump just so that we don't get a split vote and the Democrats do not come to power. They are enemies of civilization. They've gone so far left. They can't be allowed to come to power. Drop 2 says, did you see the video of the tactical officer that took out many Antifa protesters? Great stuff. Retweeted on my Twitter. Yes, I have seen some of that stuff. What's going on in Portland is just constant now. It's constant. They have no choice but to do some of what they're doing up there. You cannot allow those guys to be victorious. You just can't. Same thing in Seattle. Same thing anywhere that I've listened to them go crazy and riot and, commit arson, robbery, armed robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, and the murder of innocents. Not even when they've done it in, what's the smallest, most bizarre place? The Quad Cities, Davenport, Iowa, they can't be allowed to be successful there either. They can't be allowed to be successful anywhere. It has to be quelled, unfortunately, and I hope it doesn't come to quelling it via shooting. What they've been doing is just short of shooting, but I hope it doesn't come to shooting, but it wouldn't shock me if it did. Dropper 2 says Kamala Harris, maybe. I don't know who they're going to get. We will find out probably within the next week, I think. We'll find out. It'll be somebody crazy. They've gone so far to the left that they can't do anybody that isn't just nutty leftist. They just have moved too far to the left. I would prefer, to see them come back to some level of sanity. I prefer when you have at least two competing political parties, preferably 7 or 8 would be fine with me, but that's not possible. But at least 2 competitive, sane, and rational political parties. But the left has veered so far off into the margins that they're no longer even on the page, and they can't be allowed to come to power. It's just as simple as that. Jeanette, by any chance he picks a Black Lives Matter member, not a politician? I don't think so. BLM is starting to, there's people who have been associated with BLM, the organization, and they're starting to quit because they think that the place is a hotbed of socialist and leftist activity, which it is. The organization, Black Lives Matter, is absolutely a communist organization. You look at their webpage, you can see it right on the front webpage what their goals are, and they're obviously communist goals. I don't think you can choose somebody from BLM. My guess is somebody or other that ran in the primary. I think if he was smart, he'd get I've forgotten her name now, the woman from Hawaii. If he was smart, he would get her, because she could actually, because what they used to do is they used to try to figure out who can we get to make up for this person's deficits when it comes to a larger group of voters, right? Who can we find that will make up, this person brings this to the table, we bring this other person. Sometimes it was just geographic. They'd say, okay, well, our presidential candidate can take this part of the country, so we need a vice presidential candidate who will appeal to this part of the country. They used to do that. Now it's kind of, if it was me, if I was smart, I'd be saying, okay, we got a crazy leftist, and he is, and senile to boot. We need to get somebody who is, A, obviously not senile, and B, somebody who is not crazy leftist. And the only person who was that, damn, I'm forgetting her name because I really liked her. She was I think it was the congressperson from, and still is, ends her last term, from Hawaii. And I thought she was good. I mean, if you were going to be a Democrat, so I don't think the Democrats can win this time around. But if you were going to be a Democrat and you wanted to have somebody who actually stood a chance of at least winning, at least making a good showing on the debate stage, it would have been her. But I don't think they'll do that. I think they'll go with somebody crazy as well. Yes, thank you, Dalton. It was Tulsi Gabbard. As a politician, not necessarily in terms of what her goals are, but as a politician, I thought that she was good. I thought she was very good. She did a video one time that I talked about on the show. It was an amazing piece of footage, I thought. All it was just some Twitter footage of her going through her daily workout. This is a woman who is ex-military. She does surfing as a hobby. If she'd run, she would have been the first. She'd made it. She would have been the first presidential candidate who looks good in a bathing suit. And she's got that going for her too. But by doing just this 10 or 15 seconds of her doing workouts, that was really good optics. I mean, really good optics. If they had her as a vice presidential candidate, they might be able to siphon off a few voters. Not enough, I don't think, to beat Trump. But her on a debate stage, that would have been great. I mean, from a Democratic perspective, what could Trump do? He couldn't impugn her her patriotism. You can't do that to somebody who did like 2 tours, even if it wasn't combat. You couldn't say things like, Crooked Hillary or Sleepy Joe or anything like that. She was, clearly in good physical condition. She was mentally good. If you threw questions at her on a debate stage about the military, she could handle those questions, because she's been there to some extent. Would have been a much better candidate for the Democrats. But they fracked up because they can't do anything. It isn't extremely far left in these days. But if he had her as a running mate, that might help. But I can't imagine that he will. I don't think he will. Let's see. Drop 2 says, witness interview. Bill Clinton was at Epstein's Island with Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and 2 young girls. That may very well be. I always, even when you're dealing with something like that, always have to defer to innocent until proven guilty. So until such time as we have somebody who will testify, such time we've got somebody on the stand, I have to go with innocent until proven guilty. It's certainly very possible that there were people involved. That woman from NBC who got her story killed, or ABC, talks about the palace, that maybe Prince Andrew had been involved. I think it's certainly possible that there were lots of people that were famous were involved, but until such time, I can't deal with anything like rumors or even interviews of potential victims. I have to say, okay, we need somebody up on the stand who will say under oath, this is what happened. Until such time as we got that, it's kind of speculation as far as I'm concerned. Dalton Brazier says, for all of her speaking out and talking about Tulsi Gabbard against the war machine, then endorsing Biden was very disappointing. Yeah. Well, it's only when you get to something like the Libertarian Party where they don't immediately endorse whoever is the nominee. That's just what always happens. Trump went through and trashed everybody in the last election, every Republican. I notice that every single time we have an election, each side goes through and trashes all of the other candidates. But the moment that one is chosen, the rest of them all fall in line and say, yes, this is the best person. Maybe it wouldn't have been me, but he's still the best person for this job. You look at it and you go, man, that sort of sounds two-faced, but they always do it every single time, Drop of Truth says, Albert Pierrepoint, the British executioner, was an ancestor of mine. Oh, wow. On your dad's side, we could keep it in the family. Well, just be quiet about it. I didn't say to do anything. Okay, let me talk a little bit here. It's about half an hour in, so let me talk a little bit about this whole thing about how this virus is going to be here forever. And by the way, if you want to call into the show, I am doing so via Skype. Since I don't really want to give out all of my Skype info in public, I'm going to handle it by having you send me an email to call in at sylranch.tv. If you give me your Skype ID, then I will Skype you back. You'll then be free. You can talk about pretty much anything that you want. So again, if you're interested in being heard on Tales from SYL Ranch, send me an email at callin@skype.tv. Give me your Skype ID, and I will Skype you. And that email address, again, is callin@sylranch.tv. So, to talk about the virus, does anybody actually remember the reason that we were given for wearing masks? Do you remember what it was supposed to be and how long and what it was for? Because it wasn't to halt the spread of the virus. Because from the beginning, it was assumed that many, if not all, Americans would get it. The masks weren't supposed to be worn forever, because again, from the beginning, it was assumed that many, if not all, Americans would get it. The reason that we were given was that it would help flatten the curve. Remember that? Flattening the curve. Remember back to January and February? I know a lot of people have a political memory that lasts about 2 months. Back in January and February, we were told that everyone was going to get it, and that it was going to overwhelm our healthcare system. And so that's why we were told that we need to wear masks in order to slow the infections and not overwhelm the healthcare system. They call that flattening the curve. It was to spread the infections over time, thereby not overwhelming the healthcare system. We were told that this was only going to last a few weeks, and that this would only be necessary because we wanted to flatten the curve. But here is the absolute God's honest truth about this. I've put it in my lower third right now because it's true, and I have a meme about it that I circulate on YouTube, and it's on Facebook and Twitter as much as I can. Here is an absolute truth of life. Government cannot protect you from a virus. Just think about that for a second. How can the government protect you from a virus? The answer is real simple. It can't. It's impossible. However, with this virus that I cannot name without YouTube deranking, suspending, or deleting my account, one very important thing happened, and that was the press went insane. When they're provided with any opportunity to blame anything on President Trump, his supporters, and Republicans in general, the press will just gleefully pounce. And they went into overtime in a concerted effort to terrify you, and they were generally fantastically successful. The problem with terrifying the public is it causes the public to acquiesce to any government demand so that the public will feel more secure. And this is exactly what happened. Those in government will then take advantage of any opportunity to take more power. You must always remember that those in government, from your local mayor to the President of the United States, and it doesn't matter which party or when, are power-mad sociopathic narcissists in the textbook definition of the words. I invite you, look up antisocial personality disorder, which is the medical term for sociopathy. I have a link to it in my description box, the Wikipedia on it. Look up narcissistic personality disorder. And again, I have a link to that in the Wikipedia article in my description box. Take a look at the symptoms. They're listed out there. Now, what professional psychologists do is they take these symptoms and they say, okay, if they have a certain number of them, we can diagnose them with this personality disorder. Well, we're just neophytes. But if you look at just the symptoms, it's pretty easy to see that enough of them apply that even a neophyte like me can see that our politicians suffer from what psychologists would probably call high-functioning personality disorders. High-functioning just means that they're capable of working and operating in society without people being so creeped out by them that they end up ostracizing them, or that they are so bad they need hospitalization. But that our politicians, then, are also power mad is evident and symptomatic of something that the British Lord Acton said in the 1800s. Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power tends to corrupt absolutely. What this really means is, in short, is that it means that the more power you get, the more power you want. Now, this virus that I can't name without YouTube deranking, suspending, or deleting my account has provided an enormous opportunity and amount of power to politicians at every single level. Because people are terrified, and they still are. They have basically handed almost total control over their lives to the politicians. Politicians do now, in fact, have the literal power of life or death. They have mandated masks for purposes other than the stated one. They will never relinquish this power. No politician ever willingly relinquishes power. Power is taken from politicians by one of three ways: collapse, revolt, or somebody from outside conquering another country. They never give up this power willingly. Never. That's what they're power mad. They never give it up, not willingly. They have mandated the closing and subsequent complete permanent failure of businesses nationwide in the U.S., and this then gives them total power over the lives and the fortunes of every human being in the country. Remember this: if they control how you make money, then they control you. This situation is exactly the same as the airport security measures taken in the U.S. after 9/11. Now, I was in IT for 40 years. I always like to say this. And one of my specialties was IT security. And this included some knowledge of physical security, because I had to know if there were physical security measures that were appropriate to prevent unauthorized individuals from accessing sometimes millions of dollars worth of IT equipment. And this knowledge allows me to know that what's called airport security is nothing of the kind. And here's why. Anybody who's got a military background will know this. To physically secure something, you create a perimeter around it and then only allow in a few select people who have been pre-approved. What we call airport security does it backwards. It creates a sort of non-existent perimeter and then attempts to screen out, lets everybody in while screening out only a small number. But it's impossible. It's so impossible that it's laughable. You cannot secure a public place. It's why Abraham Lincoln and JFK were assassinated. It's why the president's Secret Service detail has nightmares when the president makes any kind of public appearance. You cannot secure a public place. It's impossible. And in fact, if you try doing with the president what they do in airports, create a perimeter sort of around him and let anybody in, but only stop a select few, president, they could count their life expectancy in a matter of minutes. It's stupid. It's ridiculous. You cannot do it. What we have is airport security theater, because having been terrified by hijackers, the public went along with something that was doomed to failure. And in fact, you can check it. Look at the Homeland Security or TSA websites. You can see precisely how many terrorists that they've caught. Want to know the number? It's 0. They have caught 0 terrorists. You can also see the number of security tests that the TSA has failed. And the number of that is all of them. It is impossible to secure a public place. I try to be serious, but it's utterly laughable. You can't. It's impossible. And the power-mad sociopathic narcissists in government understand physical security as well as I do, if not better, because they have to deal with it personally themselves when they go in public appearances. They know that airport security is completely laughable from a security standpoint. However, airport security had 2 very important results. The first was to condition 2 entire generations of Americans to believe that they have no rights in airports or on aircraft. But it also taught the power-mad sociopathic narcissists in government that the American public can be terrified into happily handing over their rights. I always thought George Lucas was being over the top, because I'm a science fiction fan and a lot of stuff that I quote is science fiction or comes from it. And I thought that George Lucas was being over the top in Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. But it turns out he gave Padme a line that turns out to be true. This is how liberty dies, to thunderous applause. We are destroying our own liberty to our own thunderous applause. It is impossible for government to save you from a virus. However, having been terrified, the public has ceded the power of life and death to power-mad sociopathic narcissists, and they will never relinquish this power. They never, ever relinquish power willingly. It either has to be done when another country invades you, or via civil war, or when it collapses. We will all be wearing masks for the rest of our lives. Our children will be wearing them, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. After we're dead, all of our progeny from here on out will be wearing them. It will never end. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. There is only one way to stop this, and that's for us right now to defy our government's mandates. And that is why I got this mask to wear. At the moment, our power-mad sociopathic narcissist in chief here in Nebraska, Governor Pete Ricketts, has instituted a pointless and apparently a statewide mask order. Now, defying this means that I can't enter. If I just didn't wear a mask, I couldn't enter any place of business that I've seen, and this would also be grocery stores, which means I would starve. So the next best thing is to passively aggressively, as I've done with this mask, make a statement about just how stupid this whole thing is. And that's why I got this mask. And that's why I wear it in public, and people have taken pictures of me. I'm very happy when people come up and say, hey, can I take your picture, or can I take a selfie with you? That's great. Now, I may not be able to take this mask off without starving, but I can at least make a visible statement about its stupidity. But without all of us refusing to wear a mask, en masse, all of us, we will never be free of this. Without defying government mandates en masse, that's everyone, the power-mad sociopathic narcissists will always hold the power of our lives and fortunes. This was only supposed to be a few weeks, and it was supposed to flatten the curve. But instead, we have allowed the power-mad sociopathic narcissists to give us an irrational terror that is now destroying our own liberty at our own thunderous applause. So that's my mask. Hopefully I was audible under that. Let me turn my volume down. Hopefully I was audible under that. I played with it quite a while before I started today, so hopefully I was. Gosh, let me go back here. I'm behind now. Let's see. Drop 2 says, Drop 2 says, Max Egan of the Crown House says the WHO has predicted that the crown disease will be with us until March 2025. Doesn't matter. We still won't be free of it. Doesn't matter however long it's supposedly around. After that, the power mad sociopathic narcissists are going to say, oh, we need to have this. We need to have it all the time, full time. Because you never know the next thing that might come up. And they're right to that extent. We never know. And it will strike our cities worse than New York City, worse than anywhere else in the U.S. because they have a fantastically dense population and surrounded by all kinds of seaports and airports that nothing are checked for. Lots and lots of different trade coming in and out of. It's going to hit them bad anytime something like this happens. But they're going to use that as some kind of excuse. We will never be out without these masks. Mark my word, we will never be without the masks ever again. Goalposts keep moving. Larry says, absolutely. Yeah. Drop of Truth says, Dr. Boy, I'm not sure I can pronounce that. Let me bring it down to where it's a little closer to my eyes. Sonornya Swaminathan, the WHO's chief scientist, told the Financial Times Global Boardroom webinar on Wednesday, quote, I would say in 4 to 5 year time frame we could be looking at controlling this. Yeah. That was never the point with these masks. Never the point. The point was so that we could flatten the curve. It wasn't because we thought we were going to stop the spread of it. It was because it wanted to flatten the curve. You know, guess what, guys? We always knew that this was going to happen. We always knew a lot of people were going to get it, if not just about everybody. Excuse me. Larry says, mask link only goes to a short URL website. Oh, okay, I'll fix that. Problem is, when you, I'll take a look at it after it's done. You can find it. I've forgotten the name of the mask. It's like steampunk Halloween mask or something. But they take it. Anywhere I go, they'll take this. Because it does, in fact, the inside of it does, in fact, cover your mouth and your nose completely. And believe it or not, this stupid thing, it's not exactly functional because it goes nowhere inside the mask. I mean, that's just a slot. But it does keep all of your breath inside of the mask. When I went to the dentist about it, the kid who checked me in, he looked at it, he says, does that cover your mouth and your face and your nose? I said, yeah, absolutely. He said, okay, well, I think that's fine then. Wore it in. All of the people there wanted to look at it, got a couple of pictures taken with it. You know, they thought it was a kick. They thought it was funny as hell. So it's actual functional. You can get it. I'll make sure I fix that link after the stream's over, though. Thank you for letting me know that. Jeanette says, drop of truth, that is so depressing that they think they'll still be trying. Yeah, probably never. Drop of truth says, yes, the full quote of Lord Acton is, power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Great men are almost always bad men, even when they exercise influence and not authority. Still more when you superadd the tendency of the certainty of corruption by authority. Yes, that is the full quote. The part that I tend to remember, and the part that's probably the most famous, is where he says power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. I learned that one really early on, because everything I need to know I learned from Star Trek. And Star Trek's second pilot, where no man has gone before, was their very first, what Star Trek fans call Yagla stories. Yet another godlike alien, Yagla. Because in fully 1/4 of Star Trek, the original series stories, there was a godlike alien involved. But that was the first one. And it was a human being who'd gained godlike powers. And as he did, he became more and more obsessed with power. And the more he could do, the more nasty he became. And at one point, Kirk says to him, "Is this what you want? Absolute power corrupting absolutely." He was an extreme, but that's a good show to watch if you want to see what happens in real life. If those people had absolute power, like they did, if they got godlike powers, they would abuse them and destroy us all. They would life and death, turning life and death over to politicians is a really bad idea. Jeanette says, "I'm a fan of science fiction." He says, "While he drinks his invisible water." Yes, absolutely. As I say, it tends to. I have to keep hydrated, especially right now. Usually, this room where I do this, there's a lot of cool air. This time, not so much. You can't see it either. I am actually under 3 lights. I have a key light directly in front of me, just above the camera. And then I have 2 other lights at 45-degree angles. And if I don't have those, my face looks very flat and off-lit, so I have to have these. It gets hot. So as I was wearing the mask and breathing inside of it, it got even worse. So I have to drink a lot. Drop Truth says, "Gas masks, just like your parents were in World War II. Great mask. Yes, $22.95 on with shipping on Amazon. Yeah, you can look it up. It's the steampunk mask. It's a Halloween mask. That's all it is. It's not really a gas mask. I just liked it because, it's got all these spikes, and I thought it was a kick, and it works as an actual mask. It'll do the same thing as any of those surgical masks. Let's see. Jeanette says, "Won't vaccinate either." Oh, God, don't even get me started on vaccination. There are nurses and stuff, and you can find them on YouTube if they haven't pulled them down. But I've seen nurses and doctors talking about this, and I get it. Having been in a scientific field for 40 years, and my degree is in computer science, not in information technology or some specialization of it. It's in computer science, because at the time that I got that, there was no specification. There was no specific specialties to get into. Computers, we just started. When I finished my degree, we were just starting to use PCs in a major way as desktop computers. Before that, it was God, hardest course I ever took. I took a summer course, my very last course before I got my degree, writing an operating system for a mainframe. So this was back before it was really computer science. And so you had to know science in order to do what you do. Not that you don't still have to know some of it now in IT, but back then it really was science. So you had to know the scientific method. You had to know how to use the scientific method. And when I see these vaccines being fast-tracked as much as they are, along with other people who are better experts than I say, oh my God, they're bypassing the scientific method. They're not going through some of the science that you need to go through in order to have a good vaccine. You're not going through animal testing for long periods of time. You're not going through, double-blind studies for long periods of time. I mean, real science takes time. You have to spend a lot of time. You have to have peer-reviewed papers that are then replicated by others in the same field, and then you have double-blind studies that take, with a medication can take months to do, and then you have clinical trials. So when they come out with this, human beings who take this are going to be guinea pigs. There's no way around it. They're going to be guinea pigs. I am not going to get a vaccine until such time as we've had enough human guinea pigs so that we know what the side effects are and what the real effect is on a general population. There's no way that I'm going to get vaccinated on something where I am going to be a guinea pig. In IT, I was stupid enough to be my own guinea pig once in a while, and that always backfired on me every single time. You never be the guinea pig. You let some other poor schmuck who's too dumb to know to be the guinea pig. No way am I going to take any of those vaccines until such time as we have been able to see what the impact is on the general populace and what the real side effects inside of a general populace are. They are bypassing the scientific method. There is no possible way that you could make this stuff go fast-tracked like this and think that you're going to get any kind of vaccine within the next 5 years without bypassing important parts of the scientific method. Drop Juice says Bill Gates has mentioned that the vaccination will have RNA, DNA components that will lock onto your DNA and replicate. That's frightening. Vaccines kind of do that anyway because of the way that they work. But again, you're talking about stuff that cannot possibly be following the same kind of scientific method that's used for every other medication in the universe. I mean, by the time you get to taking any medication that your doctor prescribes, the doctor will say, okay, now there's some possibility, there's X percentage of people get this kind of side effect or stuff like that. Hell, I'm on a couple of medications they call, I think it's called off-brand or something like that, where the medication itself isn't being used correctly to treat something. It's the side effects. The side effects are so well known on some of these that I'm using side effects of medication to treat some of my issues. The doctors, by the time it actually gets to you, by the time it gets to a point where a doctor can prescribe it, it is well known. They've done a whole bunch of testing that you cannot do in this short amount of time. I'm sorry, no way. I am not going to be a guinea pig. Just ain't going to happen. In the immortal words of George W. Bush the first, and ain't going to do it. Wouldn't be prudent at any juncture. Nobody remembers that. Jeanette says, Drop Truth says the most terrifying words in the English language are I'm from the government and I'm here to help. I don't know if Ronald Reagan said that first. I know he's quoted by it, but there was Roy Rogers? God, I don't remember. I think it's there was a humorist at the beginning of the 20th century. His whole shtick was he did cowboy stuff. I want to say it may have been Roy Rogers. I don't remember, but he had a lot of stuff to say about that. So did Mark Twain. He said, "No man's wallet is safe when Congress is in session." So there's a lot of those. Jeanette says, "I don't believe it will be any more effective than a flu shot, which has a less than effective rate." Yeah, I mean, I get the flu shots because again, for the most part, those have gone through rigorous testing, and the side effects are pretty well known and they're pretty small. But when you're dealing with something like this that's fast tracked, no, you're ejecting the scientific method somewhere along the way, probably multiple places. And I'm sorry, man, I'm a scientist. For me, that scientific method is important. It's how we got to the point where literally everything that I see around me, for that matter, everything you see in my green screen, is something that was made by the scientific method. There is nothing today that you see, touch, or otherwise that you do not interact with that was not created via the scientific method, the application of that scientific method. You take that out, you're not dealing with science anymore. You're at best dealing with, crossing your fingers. You don't know. You've got to have that scientific method. Let's see. It's not meant to be effective. It's poison. Gates and company will try it out in Africa first. Remember their depopulation agenda. I don't know necessarily that anybody's trying to poison you. That would be counterproductive for the most part. But you just don't know what the effect's going to be. You just don't know. Usual vaccination testing requires a minimum of 5 years, Drew Truth says. Yeah, absolutely. And with good reason. You have to have all of those things that I just talked about. And if you don't have them, you ain't got science. You have at best guesswork. Just guesswork. Jeanette says, like Bill, it's not being tested, and long-term effects might not show up for 10 plus years. Yep, not for me. No, I would not take it. Just wouldn't. Dr. Stella Emanuel, the controversial Houston doctor advocating for the use of that stuff that I probably can't talk about that begins with an H to treat Crohn disease, has had success, 350 out of 350 success rate. I believe that's the individual that has been banned. I probably shouldn't have said their name. Their videos have been banned by YouTube, and is being, if you try to share them on other social media, it's this tweets and posts are getting blocked and taken down by social media. But yeah, that at this point, at this stage of the game, that drug may be useful in terms of treating. Problem is, it doesn't match the WHO or other, I don't know, you don't want to say mainstream, but acceptable by big tech sources, and so they just get rid of they scrub it as much as possible. The reality is this is a very fluid situation. We don't know for sure what's going to work. We just don't know. And so for anybody to say, and see, what people are used to hearing is somebody says definitively, this is what's going to work, this is what we've got. Well, this is too fluid. It's moving too fast. There are too many unknowns. We don't know. Hell, we don't know what we don't know yet. You know, the best thing we can say as an individual, you can say, I don't know what I don't know. At this point, it's so fluid that we don't know what we don't know. And so you can't, like one day post something from one scientist and say, this is the definitive answer. You can't do that because this is a moving target at the moment. It's not like a lot of other things. The vaccination for polio, right? That is not a moving target. We know that vaccination works. We know because polio was eradicated as a result of that vaccination. So we know that works. That's one where you can say to anybody, hey, does the polio vaccination work? Yes, it does. But this is new. This is constantly moving. It's not, what one person says one day, they may discover via new evidence the next day that it doesn't work the way they thought they did. And so what happens then is our press pushes out this one narrative without taking into account, because the press, oh God, not only the press is nothing you ever see in the press real, nothing, even when they're trying to get the facts right, which is rare, but they are the most scientifically illiterate bunch of morons that I've ever run across. I've worked with them from time to time on IT-related stories, and I taught this stuff for 3 years. I'm pretty good at distilling things down to where maybe Joe Average can understand. But you couldn't distill it down far enough for them. They are scientifically illiterate about everything. They get everything about science that I ever know about completely wrong. And so listening to them is just a waste of time, complete waste of time. Where is Marshall this week? I don't know, drop of truth. Maybe he's... Will Rogers. That's who I'm talking about. Larry, yes, what I was talking about before. This doctor was basically called a liar by the left. Yes, anything that does not, anything that does... Because, President Trump talked about that drug once. And so the press said, oh, it's a lie, it's nonsense, it's a lie. And so now they can't come back and say, no, it's not a lie. They have to come down on her and be called a liar by the left, because everything the president does, no matter whether it's good or bad or indifferent, must be bad. It doesn't matter what it is. It must be bad. And so they have to come down on him real hard. Anyone remember that thalidomide, that was causing the birth defects? Yes. Sometimes, like you say, Jeanette, we don't know. If something's gone through, long-term trials and done the scientific method, we can say with some level of certainty how it works. But like the one major medication that I'm on that they're using for off-brand purposes, which is not for the purpose for which it's intended, but using the side effect, is because this drug has been around for 50 or so years, and they know just from clinically using it over and over again what the side effects are. They know what these side effects are. And so they can say, okay, well, Bill, we don't know for sure if this is going to work, but, X number of percentage of people get this side effect. Let's try it on you. Yeah, it works fine. But they can do that because they have a long term using these and know the side effects. Sorry, I can see my face is getting a little shiny, so I want to stop that. But yeah, you have to have time. With any drug, you have to have time to really know all about it. And when you get into these vaccines that are being fast-tracked, it sounds nice, but in reality it means that they're ejecting some part or multiple parts of the scientific method. Drop Drew says, influenza has a nasty habit of mutating in one person's body. Yeah, and it spreads. It's not exactly the same virus. The influenza never really goes away. Even if you have a vaccination for it, it never really goes away. I mean, that's how it spreads. It's like the common cold. The common cold isn't exactly common. It has a common symptoms, but what actually happens is it goes into one person, mutates, goes into the next person. That's why you can never be rid of it, because it's constantly mutating. Same thing with the flu. It's constantly mutating. That's how we get new strains of it. It's strains of the flu. It's not one single flu that just goes away. They mutate and become something else. It may have been how we got this one. We don't know yet. Jeanette says, they say Crohn disease mutates the same. Yeah, well, it's an influenza type virus. Absolutely. So, of course, it's going to mutate. Yeah. And it's part of the reason that we will never be without these masks ever again. We have already, it's just like airport security. We ceded authority of our lives over to government. All kinds of authority they didn't have before. They're not going to let go of that. They will use any excuse. Oh, no. This virus has mutated into a slightly different form. We have to keep wearing this stuff, and otherwise everybody's going to get it. Not remembering that the whole point of it was not to stop people from getting it. We knew that was going to happen. It was to flatten the curve so that we didn't overwhelm our healthcare system. But nobody remembers that, nor that it was only supposed to be a couple of weeks, nor that it wasn't supposed to completely crash our economy as it has done. Yeah, Jeanette says medicine that's been around a while is much more trustworthy. Yeah. There are some, like my parents were both psychologists at one time. They both worked at a state mental hospital. And my father, before he passed away, was always fond of saying, they've got some really good psychological medications inside of my lifetime, such that, the number of patients that they have that are committed to this mental institution. I mean, in order to be committed, you either have to do it yourself or you have to be certified as a danger to yourself or others. And the people who fall under that category, there's much fewer of them now than there were 50 years ago, because they've gotten a whole bunch of good new psychiatric medications. But the older they are, the more you know about them, the more you know about the side effects, the more you know how effective they are. And that's true with any kind of medication, not just psychiatric ones. Drop of Zeus says Bill Gates and company is releasing genetically modified mosquitoes to try to reduce the population of Florida's mosquitoes. What could possibly go wrong? I hadn't seen that one, but if so, that's stupid. I wonder if, those mosquitoes could interbreed, and I don't know necessarily that you get something horrible out of it, but I bet you wouldn't get the effect that you were intending. That's such an enormous, population of mosquitoes. I will never forget. Oh, boy. Drop it true that I see your Bill Gates meme on Twitter. Yes, I did. I also seen that some other places. I'm unclear what to make of Bill Gates. I'm always one of those people who I look at what's going on around and I say, there's no way, the George Soros, for example, is funding the Antifa and the riots and the murder that happened in the small city of Davenport, Iowa. That's just not happening. Maybe funding some of the larger ones, Portland and stuff like that, but no way is he funding all of them that are happening every single night somewhere in the United States. It's just not possible. There isn't enough money in the world. Neither does Bill Gates have enough money in the world to do it. You put these guys together, they don't have enough money in the world to cover everything we're seeing. We're just seeing the result of, 2 whole generations that were never really educated, that don't know that communism and socialism always fail, killing millions in the process. They just don't know. I've talked about it before in other videos. I talk about it again. Having taught at the college level, I know that they are not teaching students to even read, write, or perform basic math anymore. That's just not happening at the K through 12 level. I wish it was, but it's not. It's clear. So you get people who are being basically indoctrinated. If you're a teacher, call me. Give me an email at callin@sylranch.tv. I will put you on, and I will sit here and debate what you are not teaching your students. I will tell you from the perspective of an instructor, how you are a college instructor, what you are not teaching your students, and what you are indoctrinating them into. So I think it's what you're seeing really is just the effect of that over the course of a couple of generations more than anything else. Jeanette Bloom, Jeanette says, I think the mosquitoes are like neutered. Regular mosquitoes will mate with them and not have any babies. Pretty sure they will have missed something they always do. Yeah, it's anything you do something like that it can be problematic in ways that you don't foresee. You get something into a large population. It's one thing to have it in a lab. It's one thing to have 1,000 mosquitoes. It's another thing to put them into a general population in their real native environment as opposed to some laboratory environment. Just you don't know. Drop 2 says, can I remember when the world used DDT and reduced the African mosquito population and malaria to about 20% effective, and then DDT was banned? Yes, there's another one. There's a perfect example of when the press succeeded in terrifying people. The reality is that DDT was one of the best things that ever could have come out. It was not really harmful. And later scientific evidence proved that. But by then, the public had been terrified, and so they had outlawed it by then. DDT, Drop 2 says, was also used in Brazil and proved to be very effective, banned there too. Yeah, again, you're dealing with a thing where it's one of the times that the press, being completely scientifically ignorant, latched on to, maybe some study or another. I'd have to go back and see exactly what the timeline was. But I know for a fact, coming from a ranching family, that stuff was not particularly dangerous. And, you can talk all you want about having organic foods and stuff that isn't grown with pesticides or anything like that. Hey, that's fine if you want to pay a ton of money for it. But if you want to feed the world like the United States does, no, you've got to have those pesticides. Anybody that does any work in agriculture will tell you that. I had a guy who was a seed, he sold seeds. And there's a huge number of them. And talk about genetically modified seeds being horrifying. But no, they're not really. They're what allow us to feed the world. And he said, you get rid of genetically modified seeds. Which 2 billion people do you want to die first in the world? And do you volunteer to be among them? That's what that stuff does. It allows us to feed the world. Brazil's considering using it again. Yeah, well, that would be great. I think it would be great if some country large enough to matter would use it again and maybe show the rest of us that it's okay to use. Yes, Jeanette says all seeds have been modified, whether it's done in a laboratory or whether it's been done over a period of many years. Corn is a perfect example. When corn was originally maize, and I've seen it. It's a purple thing about this big. It's kind of teardrop shaped. It did not come in big ears. It was bred to do that over a long period of time, genetically modified by humans. It was not done in a laboratory, but it was done more slowly over time. But humans genetically modified maize so that it would come out like corn. Drop 2 says an effective and safe pesticide is made from hydrogen peroxide and white sugar. That's frowned upon. I don't know enough about pesticides and stuff to be able to tell you one way or the other. I'm ignorant of that side of the world. I have a grounding in agriculture, but even when I was talking to my, second cousin or somebody when I was out here a couple of weeks ago, even talking to him, I knew that all I have is a grounding. He's a guy that actually, makes his living raising cattle. And I could tell just from talking to him, he set me straight on a couple of my misconceptions. I have a better grounding than anybody else that you're going to hear on YouTube, unless it's somebody who actually works in agriculture. I have a much better grounding than you're going to hear from them. But it is still only a grounding. And I don't want to say one way or the other about what's good or what's not. I can tell you about DDT because I've been aware of what the actual studies over the years have been about that. It's one of the things I'm always fond of saying. My perspective is very different than a lot of people's, because to begin with, I have a grounding in agriculture. I'm not in agriculture, and I don't pretend to be. And if you are, feel free to correct me anytime I screw up. But I have a grounding in it. And you won't find that anywhere on any of these people from the coasts. No matter how much you may like, somebody like, oh God, I don't know, any of the more conservative people on Fox News, for example, when they do their stuff. Tucker Carlson, not a bad commentator in my perspective, but doesn't know anything about agriculture. I also, of course, have 10 years living in Chicagoland. Nobody that I'm aware of goes from, this to a city of about 150,000. It's double that now. To, 7 million people in the city itself and millions more in the surrounding suburbs. And then cities of 100,000, and doing IT work in all of those, and having built chunks of the modern internet literally with my own two hands. And when I say literally, I don't mean that in a figurative sense. When I say literal, I mean literal. I literally built chunks of the internet with my own two hands, running cable, things like that. So I get a different perspective than most people. I just do. I have a broader life experience than Tucker Carlson is going to have. I just have a broader life experience. And I'm coming at you from a place that does, we have a different perspective on life. We're not sitting on America's coasts with millions of people around us. We're out here where our larger cities are 1 million or so. And even those pretty few and far between each other. So. Go see the great videos. Let's see here of on the YouTube channel Infomatic Films. I've seen some of those. Yes, very amusing, great information. Has there been anything interesting on these scanners this week? It's basically the same as it's been for the last, I don't know how many days, weeks. Sorry, I can tell I'm getting a little bit shiny again. One of the things that I do on my show, by the way, is I don't wear makeup. I know lots of people who do, but I don't, and I rely on lighting to look human. So when I get shiny, I want to take care of it. Interesting new on the scanners. Not really. The problem is, as I mentioned before, is that it's now so common to have these riots and crimes and whatnot going on. The press and stuff are focusing on places like Portland, but it's happening everywhere somewhere. Every night of the week, somewhere it's happening. There's a YouTube channel. I'll put a link to them when I'm done. It's called Woke or something like that. You have to understand they come at it from the perspective of these things are good, but they are aggregators. You need to turn off any time that they're making any kind of commentary about what you're seeing. Ignore that. Just pay attention to the fact that they've got 4 to 6 live streams sitting inside of their windows at any given time. Those guys are good to watch. Can't agree with their mindset or anything, and what they talk about I hate, but watch the videos. Those are good, and sometimes they will show you videos of riots in progress. It's happening somewhere all the time. The only difference now, as opposed to when it first started happening in Minneapolis, is that it's become blasé, where it used to be that I would be woken up every night because 2,000 listeners were going to some place or another. Now it's become so common that people are no longer tuning in. When they had that shooting in Chicago at the, it looks to me like it must have been gang-related shooting of someone's funeral. When they did that, my scanner went blaring at 2,000 and more, and I looked at it and said, oh, Chicago. Yeah, okay, they're rioting. What a shock. It wasn't until the next day when I saw the news, I went, oh, okay, it was some kind of gangland-related hit. It had to be. I don't know what they eventually came up with or if they've even come close to solving that, but my initial point, just look at it and go, oh, okay, started shooting up a funeral. They were shot back at, lots of casualties. That's Chicago gangs for you, Jeanette says, heard earlier that there was problems in Schenectady. Might very well be. Again, I don't know. Why haven't the Portland protesters been arrested? Well, some of them have. They have been arrested quietly. That's what they're calling in our press Gestapo tactics or black bagging. That's not what it is at all. These guys do identify themselves. What they're doing, frankly, is smart from my perspective. What they're doing is that they are going to these people, they watch them commit the crimes, they go away and they stop them and they get them done. As opposed to being out in the front lines where then you have to worry about, is somebody going to start shooting at me? Do I need to start shooting back? So they are arresting some of them, but not a ton. But it's just a question of numbers. You know, if you really wanted to get them, you'd have to bring out large numbers. And, you know, you're in a situation where it's easy for this to escalate along many different vectors. It would be very easy to have this whole situation escalate in a very bad way. You know, I've said before, I don't think we're in a situation where ultimately we're looking at civil war. I don't. It looks like a Kobayashi Maru scenario to me. Again, everything I learned from Star Trek. Kobayashi Maru scenario. There is a no-win scenario here. No matter what you do, it escalates, either on the part of the government trying to control it, that can escalate it, or the people who are doing it can escalate it, or both. You know, I just don't see a good end to it. What they're doing in terms of trying to arrest them quietly and after the fact, good way to go. But I don't know, you know, what you would hope for is they aim for the biggest ringleaders. Supercruise 63, hi, how's it going tonight? You say, I always thought America was a multicultural country, but now it seems that my culture is being torn away while being replaced by other cultures. Kind of pisses you off. Yeah. What's really being torn away is what they call the American experiment. The United States is unique among other countries because we have a constitution that does not say what the citizen can or cannot do. We have a constitution that says the government can only do a very limited number of things, and the rest is up to the citizenry, either at the state level or the individual level. That is what makes the United States unique among other countries. And that's what's being torn away, because we have a couple of generations of people who, they weren't even taught to read. Certainly they were never taught any history. They were never taught anything that I was taught in high school, which we called civics, which was where you learned explicitly about these things. You know, that's what's being torn away. We're seeing a move towards socialism because a couple of generations now think that that's a good idea. But no, it's not. Communism and socialism always fails, killing millions in the process. Look at the 20th century for proof positive. The 20th century is, if nothing else, a complete textbook about how communism and socialism always fail. Let's see. Jeanette says, and tonight in Springfield, the protesters went into a suburb and homeowners came out of their houses and stopped them. Yes, we're going to see a lot more of that. We're going to see a lot more of that. Because they've started saying, oh, we're going to go to rural areas. I'm like, dude, you just feel free. You feel free to go out here. Just give it a shot and see how long it takes for some rancher who hunts for meat in the wintertime to snipe your ass from somewhere you have never even thought about a sniper being. Go ahead. Make their day, you know. I when I was out there, I talked to that second cousin or whomever he is. And he was like, you know, we worry about them coming out here. And I said, well, probably not much. And he said, not very much, no. Drop 2 says, Annie No on Twitter has links to these protest videos. Yes, Annie No is now the guy to go to for this because of the fact that the Antifa assaulted him and sent him to the hospital with some kind of brain hemorrhage. He got more notoriety because of that. And anybody sane can see that he didn't deserve that. The Antifa say that he did, but then they say that I'm a fascist. So, Dropper Drew says, Brie Larson's YouTube channel started with 1.8 million viewers, then plummeted to barely 70,000 and decreasing with only 6 videos. Yeah, Wooden is a lumberyard. Yeah, I don't know what was going through her brain. My only problem with her channel was that she was being given special dispensation that the rest of us don't get. For the rest of us, you have to have X number of viewers and X number of minutes viewed for certain things to be able to be turned on. So, for example, I need, please do like, sub, hit the notification bell, tell all your friends, family, neighbors, pets, and livestock to do the same. Because I want to be able to do live streams again. I may have a way around that by using this proxy that I've talked about that I may be able to use next week to simultaneously stream to Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. There may be, in looking at it, I may have found a way around getting around this restriction, but earlier this year sometime, I don't know when, Facebook changed it so that you could no longer live stream unless you had 1,000 subs. So please bring me up another 600 or so. I want that 1,000 so that I can live stream if I need to. I may have a way around it. I may have a way around it by using Nginx the way that I have planned to use for streaming. It would require a little bit of prep work on my part, but there is a phone camera app that will allow me to stream out to Nginx, and Nginx can then stream to YouTube. So it would be what amounts to a live stream. It requires more advanced setup than just doing a live stream does out of the YouTube app, but at least it may be possible. But I do need to get up to that 1,000 subs. Please like, sub, hit the notification bell, tell all of your friends, family, neighbors, pets, and livestock to do the same. Jeanette says, isn't this a live stream? I should be specific. Live streaming from my phone. What I'm doing now is live streaming using a program called OBS, Open Broadcast Software. It is a live stream. You can live stream if you use something like that. You can live stream if you do what Facebook and YouTube calls just going live, which is impromptu live streaming, just using your webcam. My webcam is tied into OBS, which is why I can get green screens behind me. It's doing a lot of that work for me. It's why I can get my lower third with the scrolling and everything. That's all going through OBS. These are various layers inside of OBS. My camera is one layer, the part that you're seeing with me here. My green screen is another layer. In front of me, there are two layers, one for the lower third that has static text, and another layer that is the lower third that's scrolling across. But you can just throw up your webcam and start recording, and some people do that, or start streaming, and some people do that. But you can't, at this point, live stream from your phone without 1,000 subs. I'd like to live stream from my phone because I did one time before. I got stupid. I went, you can see it, I've forgotten it, I think it's called Terrorist Attack in Lincoln, Nebraska. If you go to that, I didn't do a live stream. I wanted to. I got out there, and that's when I realized, I can't live stream from my phone anymore. Used to be able to, anybody could live stream from their phones, but they changed it. I wanted to be able to live stream from my phone. I wanted to be able to just go out there with my camera and do like a lot of these live streamers do, point my cam and shut up. But I couldn't. So what I did was I took the footage that I had, ran home, and put it on Open Broadcast Software, and did it through that. But I couldn't do a live stream. I want to be able to do that again. Will that include super chats and donations? I don't know at what point you get to do super chats. I don't know. I haven't looked it up. It's been a non-issue for me always. There comes a point, I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up, and I never have because it doesn't apply to me. But there is a point at which you can do things like have link YouTube up with your merch over on Teespring, which I do have some merch on Teespring if you want to see it. Teespring.com. Actually, the best way to do it is go to sylranch.tv/donate. Link to that in my description box. But that shows the merch that I have on Teespring. There is a point at which, with enough viewers and enough view time, that it will allow you to do linking of that so it shows up right underneath your video. And there's a point at which you can do super chats where people can do can give donations, but that requires X number of viewers and X number of minutes watched during a time period, like a month or something like that. I don't know what it is for super chats. Again, I've just never checked. It doesn't apply to me in any case. I've got 10 concurrent viewers right now. That's too low for YouTube to care. So yeah, I'd love to get to that point. Just haven't, and don't expect to anytime soon. Don't mean to be particularly negative about that. It's just that I looked long ago when I first started doing this, and regular viewers know. I analyzed this long ago. And what you need to have, if you're going to have any level of possibility of success on YouTube, is you need to be charismatic, young, attractive, female, and a gamer. Charisma is an absolute necessity. Without it, you're dead. And I know that I don't have it. I started out a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. I was once an actor. And I learned early on that I don't have the charisma. I learned that just getting my headshots done professionally. I could tell that the photographer was wanting things out of me that I just couldn't deliver. And the problem is when you're acting, what you're in professionally, what you're doing is you're going up. You go into any casting session with sides, which is just your lines. You don't even have a whole scene to go from. It's just your lines. And they're looking for a specific physical type, so they'll have 100 other people who look exactly like you or so close that it doesn't matter. And the people that really get the jobs are the ones with the charisma, because they're somebody that you want to look at. It's not just not me, where occasionally you want to look at me because I'm getting emotional, which doesn't happen that much. It's you want to look at them, period. You want to look at them. You don't notice it on television and in movies, but everybody that you see there, with some very few exceptions, they have charisma. You want to look at them. That's why they're working at all. And I don't have it. I get it. I don't have it. You might think I do, but trust me, I don't. And you can't learn it. It is either something that is innate. It's something you either have or you don't. And that's why I stopped acting. Young and attractive, boy, you kind of need that. The reality is that YouTube's actual audience, for the most part, my audience is something of an exception. You're watching me partly because I'm an older guy, and you're old enough that you can, relate to me to some extent. But the majority of people on YouTube are tweens and teens. And this is because when you get beyond that, when you get too much past college, well, now you're starting to deal with marriage, with children, with car loans, with work, having to work 8 to 5, and making a mortgage, and coming on YouTube all the time to watch people who do videos isn't something you have time for anymore. So the actual crowd, the majority of people on YouTube are teens and tweens. And so being young and attractive, very, very important. I watched one of my favorite YouTubers. Go and check her out anyway. She's great. She still is. But Emma Blackery. She's a singer who, for the longest time, also made funny YouTube videos. And then she turned 26. Nothing else changed about her, but she turned 26. For most of the YouTube crowd, that is ancient. That's too old. Tweens and teens don't want to see somebody who's 26. She's a beautiful woman. She makes good music. She did kind of change the focus of her channel because she's getting older. She's not going to do the same types of things, so she started doing things that were a little older. Well, teens and tweens don't want to see that stuff. She has gone back now to doing gaming. She can't get past the young and attractive part, so now she's gaming again. And female. Female is just a big deal. I don't care. It may be sexist, but the reality is that if you're an attractive woman on YouTube, or even not so attractive, you're going to do better. There are 2 or 3 women on YouTube. Oh God, I watched some reactors. Jay Longbone. Great reactor. If you like reactors, people who react to videos and stuff like that, she's great. She's hysterical. She's not particularly young. She does have charisma. She is not what you'd necessarily call attractive. Jay Longbone, if you're watching this, I'm not saying this to be negative to you. You know as well as I do, you're pretty overweight. And that's impactive. Since I started this show, I have put on weight. I'm now getting really restrictive with my diet again, and I'm expecting that to go down. And it didn't help that we have, COVID, and I couldn't go to the gym. Oh God, I said it. I didn't mean it. I'm sorry, YouTube. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that video, the name of that virus. But we got that, and it killed all the gyms, and so I wasn't going to the gym either. So it didn't help. I'm on a track to lose some more weight, but it's impactive. It does. Doesn't matter. But you have those 4 things. You have some chance of being successful on YouTube. If you have 3, you got to have the charisma. That's just a requirement. If you have 3, you have a better chance. If you get 2, not so much. If you've got the charisma and you find your niche, okay, all right, you may be. But that's still, don't give up your day job. It's like any other artistic endeavor. Don't give up your day job. Because even if you are a charismatic, young, attractive female and a gamer, the chances against you being successful are incredibly small. And so I don't expect to necessarily be successful being, not particularly charismatic, not young, not particularly attractive, or female, or a gamer, but you got to have at least some of those, and I'm not. So I don't expect to be necessarily. But in terms of Brie Larson, there's a person who is weird. She has, I'm aware of this just because, again, I don't have it. She has some level of charisma. She has some level of charisma, or she wouldn't have had the success that she has as an actor. By the same token, there are times when she doesn't have any charisma at all. I think when she's on press junkets and stuff like that, she's not a great actress in my opinion, but she's got some charisma and that's carried her through. But she goes on press junkets and it's just like, where's your charisma? You've lost it completely. Apparently you can't, you hate press junkets and dealing with people so much that you just your charisma disappears. And that's the same thing with her YouTube videos. Whatever charisma she's got when you see her on screen, I didn't watch them. I watched them maybe secondhand, or somebody would have it embedded someplace. And I go, wow, what were you thinking trying to start a YouTube channel? So it doesn't shock me from what I've seen that her YouTube channel's just died and gone to hell. I think it'll keep doing that. She's the wrong age. She's, among other things, she's very much too old. Very much too old. She's ancient to YouTube's actual primary audience. Do I listen to any more film reviews may increase my audience? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I did that for 2 solid years, and it was just a giant bust. That space of movie reviews, reactions, and things like that very much belongs to that younger crowd. While I think particularly with science fiction and seeing so much of it as I have, I bring a lot more to the table in terms of what I know and can talk about. But the space, if you look at analyze it, that space really does belong to people who are younger. The ones who are popular, the everything wrong with, the pitch meetings, the ones screen rants, how it should have ended. They're all pretty much the game of younger people. And I look too at Red Letter Media. I love those guys. Absolutely love Red Letter Media. But they're starting to go down. And the reason is that when they started, they were in their 20s. That was in the early 2000s. They're headed into their 40s now, and they look it. And sometimes, frankly, they look like they're getting tired of what they're doing. So they're starting to decrease in popularity as well, and I think it's because of their age. And the guys there have charisma. Some of them have charisma. But they're getting too old. They're getting too old. That tween teen audience can no longer really, empathize with them anymore. It's just important. Excuse me. Do I listen to any podcasts, Dalton? Not really. And the reason for that is I'm doing largely political commentary, and I don't want to have my opinions biased by or influenced by listening to anyone else or watching anybody else. I don't watch videos that, like Tucker Carlson, for example. He and I can cover some of the same material, but I don't watch him. in advance. Sometimes I'll watch them after the fact when I've already made my opinions. But I don't watch anybody in advance. Don't listen to anybody's podcasts really, because I don't want my own opinions tainted by what I'm seeing or hearing there. I do pay some level of attention to Tim Pool, but that's largely because Tim Pool is on the left. He says so himself, but he also knows that the left has gone completely insane, and he has a hard time really empathizing with them anymore, with really identifying with them anymore. So I pay some attention to him just because it brings some level of legitimacy when I share some of his videos where he's saying some of the same things that I am, but he's coming at it from an actual left perspective. So it lends some legitimacy when you can say, hey, Tim Pool, the guy on the left, says this. Just the same way I'm saying it, just a little different perspective. But I don't usually watch them until after I've said something and after I had my own opinions out there. Let's see, I'm a little behind here. A good rant and denigrate everything. Not much of a good ranter. I'm just not. Sometimes you'll find me where I get legitimately emotional about something, but I always like to say what you're seeing here is real. I learned from watching YouTubers who were being genuine that when they go to YouTube gatherings and conventions and stuff, they find out that most of the people there are actors, and it really blows their minds. They think that they're seeing somebody who's legitimate, and mostly it blows their minds. And when I look at them, I look at a couple of things. I look at the content. If they're constantly doing the same topic over and over and over again, you're probably dealing with an actor. The Jesse Milestone, Mindless Entertainment, who sent me this, and it's on, this button is on my lapel every single episode I've done. From the beginning, she sent me one of those. Jesse Milestone made her name by screaming about how bad Star Wars The Last Jedi was. And I loved watching her do those. She was awesome. She still does great videos where she talks about it and sometimes gets emotionally invested in stuff and yells. But she made her reputation by screaming about just how, I mean screaming. Watch some of her videos from that era, and it's awesome. And they got hundreds of thousands, millions of views. And then she changed topics because after a while, there's only so many negative things that you can say about The Last Jedi, right? It's a horrible movie from my perspective and is deserved of every horrible thing that's ever said about it. But there's only so much you can say. After a while, after you've screamed your lungs out, and she screamed her lungs out, there's only so much you can say, so you move on to other things. Views took a nosedive, and so she strikes me as somebody who is probably genuine. She's not doing the same thing over and over and over again because it gets her the views. She's probably being some level of genuine. But there are lots of YouTubers out there. Another one in the science fiction space is Doomcock. Here's a guy who purports to have inside information on all kinds of stuff in terms of the science fiction world, and particularly makes negative videos about Star Trek Discovery, Star Trek Picard, and some of the new shows that are coming up that look like they're going to be crap. And I agree with his criticism, but all he ever does is talk about it, and all he ever does is say, I've got information that says this show is finally going to end at the end of this season, and then it doesn't. For 3 years in a row, he'll have that kind of information. And nobody seems to notice that he's talking out of his ass most of the time. But he's, I don't think, being genuine. I don't think he's being genuine. He's doing this for the views. He's doing it because he wants people to come back because they hear him rant about how bad, this show is and how it's going to be gone soon, which is what a lot of Star Trek fans would like to see happen. And then he's wrong. He's just doing this because he's an actor. I think there's a lot of them that were actors like that. And then there's reactors, the people who react to videos on YouTube, right? And those are people who, if they're being genuine, are really wearing their hearts on a sleeve. I couldn't do it. I can't do it. I did it for a while with Stargirl, just doing a live reaction. But I can't do it the way they do it. I don't have my heart on my sleeve like that. When reactors are genuine, they genuinely laugh, they genuinely cry, And I always look for a tell when somebody's crying, and that's if their sinuses are getting affected by it. A good actor can cry on cue, but what they can't do is cause their sinuses to become infected, and kind of have some dribble there. So if you watch a reactor and she's crying and that's not happening, then probably it's not a true reactor. They're probably acting. One of the best reactors that I like is Seska Says, Jessica of Seska Says, that she's genuine. How the hell she does it, because she'll react to something new every single day. I would be an emotional wreck if I had to do that every single day. But I think she's genuine. And so, that's what I look for, is genuineness. I can't get screaming about everything. I can't talk about the same thing every single day. I try to be genuine, whether it's good for my channel or bad. Jeanette, none of the channels you fit most of my criteria. I would have to guess that you're not a teen or a tween. If you look at some of the big ones, those are, why is PewDiePie successful? Well, wait until he turns 30. Wait until, probably less than that. Wait until he turns 30 and see what his numbers look like. Droptooth says, to be young and vacuous, I never was. Yes. Clownfish TV and Preston Jacobs avoid the age barrier by using cartoon personalities. Yeah. Doomcock wears a mask. Yeah, I don't know the way he is. Superguru63 is with us, says, we love you just the way you are, Bill. Well, thank you very much, Superguru63. Brie Larson has all the charisma of a soft French cheese. Trumpetry says, hence the name. Well, she has enough charisma so that she has a career in Hollywood. She's not a great actress in my opinion. And you look at Captain Marvel, block of freaking wood throughout the entire film. I don't get it. Why did they cast her when there could have been a million other actresses that could have done that better? But she does have charisma, because if she didn't, that movie wouldn't have done any bank at all. Nobody would have watched it. They wouldn't even have watched it just because it's a Marvel movie. It would have been, oh God, this is so boring. I can't stand it. As it was like, okay, she's a block of wood, but okay, I can still sit through her until the next great special effect. But if she really had no charisma whatsoever, then it would be awful. Like I say, the ones who actually work, have charisma, whether you know it or not. Because if they didn't, you would not want to watch them at all. You would be like, what? Turn the channel. The best example of a real good natural charisma that I have ever seen is Hulk Hogan. Oh my God. I watched him grow out of the territory era prior to WWE becoming the only game in town. And he started out in my territory of the American Wrestling Association where I live. So I got to see him go from where he had charisma but didn't really know how to work the mic or the crowd to be somebody who really knew how to work the mic and the crowd, who gave great interviews. And you wanted to look at him, really wanted to. And even if you see him, even today, if he's just doing an interview, he's got enough charisma that you want to look at the guy. But then I saw him in person. Holy crap. Here was a guy who knew how to work the crowd, and by God, you wanted to watch him. You wanted to look at him. You wanted to root for him. The man has an extraordinary level of natural charisma that I've never seen in any other performer ever. Just amazing. Let's see. Supercruise60 says, I prefer common sense people and people who speak truthfully. That fit you perfectly. Well, I try to be as truthful as I can. I'm genuine. When I talk like this, I'm being genuine. Even if I'm doing a scripted video or a monologue like I did earlier, I'm being genuine. Those are words that did not come out of anybody else's mouth or anybody else wrote. I wrote them. I'm a one-man shop. If I don't want to say the words, then I don't write them. I'm reasonably decent at doing that. I've been writing to some extent, either professionally or in the Star Trek world, since the early 1990s. And there was a guy. Marshall comes back and watches this afterwards. He'll know exactly who I'm talking about. There was a guy who started out in Star Trek fandom online before the modern internet came around. It was something called FidoNet, and it was a way for people to share their messages from place to place all over the world. It was not anything like the modern internet in any way. It relied on dial-up bulletin board systems, or in my case, I was what was called a FidoNet point, and I had my own system with lots of messages on it, but would be dialing out to some other larger bulletin board system to pull them down. We had tens of thousands of people who were involved in what was the FidoNet Trek Echo. That's what they called these forums back then. And, there were tens of thousands. In fact, it was at the time of Star Trek The Next Generation, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and we had lurkers. We had absolute lurkers from, the one that I'm from the Star Trek production staff, the one that blows me away. It blew me away when I heard it. Blew me away. Just absolutely blew me away. I had been reviewing, because I've been doing this since forever, I had been reviewing Star Trek The Next Generation episodes as they came out. And if you watch the show, you know that for a variety of reasons, they really didn't hit their stride until the third season. And in the third season, they started doing episodes that were really very good and were better in many ways than Star Trek, the original series episodes. So after giving generally pretty bad reviews or mediocre reviews to a lot of episodes for 2 years, I finally typed out the words, "This season of Star Trek is," let me see if I can get the exact right. This is some of the finest Star Trek ever produced. So at that time, I'm working as an international courier. I went back and forth between Chicago and Toronto. And I'm up in Toronto one night, and on the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Channel, they had an interview with Sir Patrick. And Sir Patrick says, some fans are saying that this is the finest season of Star Trek ever produced. And I just about fell over. I'm driving down the expressway, one of the freeways there, and I damn near go into the concrete wall at what amounted to 100 kilometers an hour. Just about slammed into the wall. Couldn't believe what I was hearing, because Patrick Stewart was a lurker, and he was saying precisely what I just said. But we had a guy on there. Oh, man, do we have a guy on there. I'm always reticent to name names. He's a guy that was literally banned, and again, I use the word literally in a literal sense. He was literally banned from every single Star Trek forum that he ever joined. He was last seen in 2010 when he was permabanned from TrekBBS.com, the very last place that would put up with him. Having to deal with him taught me how to write. Looking back all these years, I never thought that I would say that this guy was anything useful, but he taught me how to write. And so when I write stuff for my monologues, it's because I've been doing that to deal with him since forever. And it made me a better writer. It made me a much better writer. So hats off to you. You know who you are. I couldn't get along with you any more than anybody else could, but you did make me a better writer. I got to give it to you. Jeanette says to come back for my opinion, not for a vixen. Well, thank you very much, because you're not going to get a vixen. Ryan George's pitch meetings, Red Letter Media's Mr. Plinkett reviews. Oh, God, yes. If you've never seen the Plinkett reviews, if you're any kind of science fiction fan, go find the Plinkett reviews. Start out with the Star Trek ones, because they're a little bit rocky, but then Plinkett found his niche when they started doing the Star Wars prequel reviews. Those are awesome, because I was never a fan of those. I thought they were overindulgent visually, confusing visually, not very good stories. And there have been things that I have thought to say about those movies over and over again ever since they first came out. And Mr. Plinkett, who is a fictional character, hits every single one of them. The reviews are sometimes 90 minutes long, but the guys at Red Letter Media know that they can't hold your attention for a 90-minute review, right? So they put a plot in. Mr. Plinkett is a fictional character who, in the prequel reviews, is holding a hooker hostage in his basement. And so throughout the reviews, the prequel reviews, you have Nadine the hooker, first being trapped in the basement, then escaping, and then for the review of Revenge of the Sith, coming back for revenge against Mr. Plinkett. And it's just hysterical. Nadine the Hooker, that is great. And they did that to some extent with any of their longer reviews. They put some kind of plot into it. So yeah, they're great. And pitch meetings are awesome. Pitch meetings are just hysterical. I can't do them. I would never be able to do them, but they're awesome. They'll be the one that they did fairly recently for what was it? God, what's the one with the one where the guy is keeping Tiger King, the one they did for Tiger King, right? There is so much weird in Tiger King. I watched Tiger King as a result of watching the pitch meeting for it, because it's so bizarre. And they only get to part of it in the pitch meeting, and they always have some catchphrases like, "Yeah, he keeps tigers. So what is it? So what's this guy's deal? Well, he keeps tigers and makes money off of them, huh? And what else he got? Well, he also makes songs and music videos. Except he doesn't record the songs. He actually sounds like this, and the music videos have a nice soothing voice to them." And he goes, "Oh, really? What are the videos about?" "Well, mostly they're about tigers, but they're ones about his archenemy. He has an archenemy, and they get towards the end of it, and it's like, okay, I think we've got something we're working with here." And he says, "Well, I really only feel like I've made it to a small portion of this because we've got all this other stuff," and it's just hysterical. All of their pitch meetings are pretty damn funny, especially if you've seen the movie. But when I saw the pitch meeting for Tiger King, I went out and watched Tiger King. It wasn't something I was going to watch. It's sort of a documentary. I wasn't going to watch it, but man, after the pitch meeting, and it is a weird series. I heartily recommend watching the Tiger King. It's great. Jeanette said Super Cruise 63 said it perfectly. Thank you very much again. Proxnoid, you just got here. Can I start over? I'm sorry, you're going to have to watch most of this on demand. The first couple of hours on demand. Missed the mask. Maybe I'll wear it again. Yeah, I did a monologue where I brought up my mask. Kick up my level. Oops, sorry about that. Yeah, this is my. Sorry, I bumped my mic again. This is the mask that I actually wear in public. This is what I wear. It is an actual mask that meets the definition of what they want for a mask, because it covers my mouth and my nose, and this hose, believe it or not, does go straight out. It is semi-functional. It goes out and then hits. This inside of here is just a hole. It's just nothing there. It's just plastic on the back. But when I breathe, it goes through this tube. I have had people, I did a monologue about this, but I have people that have asked to take selfies with me. I've had people ask just to take my picture. I went to the dentist a couple of days ago with this, and everybody wanted to come in and look at it, and a couple of people took pictures. So yeah, this is my mask. Sorry about that. It's a Halloween mask. I have a link that apparently isn't working below, so I'll fix that after the thing. But it's called the steampunk, gas mask or something like that. It's just a Halloween mask. If you want to be passive aggressive about people who are telling you have to wear a mask, get this one. The dentist thought it worked. There was a kid who came out. My dentist was being really weird. Let me take this off so that you can hear me. My dentist, the way they had to do this, I mentioned it earlier, they won't let you just go into the waiting room. They have you sit in your car and call them on the phone and check in that way. And then they send somebody out who goes over the usual, do you have COVID, blah, 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 any of these symptoms, blah, blah, blah. And he looked at my mask and he said, "Does that cover your mouth and your nose?" I said, "Absolutely." And he said, "Okay, good enough for us." So that's what I'm doing. Let's see. Thoroughly enjoy. Drop2 says thoroughly enjoy YouTube videos on inventions, workshop techniques, mechanics, etc. like that. Yeah, there's some of those that I watch too. I watch a variety of them. I'd be hard pressed to tell you all of them. Did I miss my big announcement of being a non-binary reptilian furry? No, I'm not a furry. I have a somewhat distant relative who for a while was a bit fixated on furries, kind of had to tell his father, you may not know what that is. That's kind of weird. But no, I'm not. I'm certainly not a reptilian furry. Although one of the best costumes I ever saw, because I used to go to Anime Central, which is in Chicago, which is where my kids grew up with my ex. And my one kid is a huge anime fan. And so we went to Anime Central several times. Oh my God, some of the costumes you see there were just so inventive. One of the best ones I ever saw was of a unicorn. And the girl that had this had, you could clearly tell the front part was her and her legs. But behind her, she had functional moving legs. Swear to God. Just the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. Just amazing. I mean, I sort of knew how she did it, but you look at it and you go, wow, man, the effort that took, In terms of people that I watch, let me pull up my own stuff here, and hopefully this won't frack up, because I've got such a good computer now. Hopefully this won't frack anything up in terms of my pulling stuff up. People that I watch, like Mindless Entertainment. She's streaming now. Thanks. Thanks, Jesse, for streaming the same time I am. She gave me this button here. I've worn it ever since the beginning of the show. Mahler, who also does a lot of reviews, is currently streaming. Mr. Sci-Fi, who does... He's the mastermind behind Space... why am I forgetting the name? Space Command, which is a really, really good web series. Cult Cinema Classics. There's a couple of those that I watch because occasionally they come up with some weird movies. Stuff that maybe I've seen once or twice, or stuff that appeared on television, science fiction and other types, horror movies, science fiction mostly. Cult Classics is one of those. It's stuff that's probably in the public domain that maybe I just haven't seen. Mindless Entertainment again, Jesse. Tony Heller, I'm not sure why. Captain Robert April, who also is a guy my age. Similar, audience in terms of thing. If you look up Captain Robert April, you probably see why. PragerU, I watch them, although I understand that they're in the process of being banned and half of their videos are being demonetized and all kinds of stuff for no good reason whatsoever. Let's see, more on the cult cinema classes. Just So Shayla. I watch her for her reactions. Again, she's somebody that's younger and seems to me like she's genuine. I know the psychology behind this. My guilty pleasure on reactors tends to be two different types of people. One is people who are a bit younger, kind of the age that my kids were when we used to watch Doctor Who together, and so I get why I kind of gravitate towards that age. The other age is women who are a bit older, not necessarily my age, but 30-ish, because those are the ones, and I think the reason that guys watch them, those are the ones that you can say, this would be like watching this show with my girlfriend. That's kind of why. And Just So Shayla is one of those. Blame Society films. They're another good one to watch. Number of different things they do during the week. Natalie Gold. Amazingly, there are kids that have never seen a Star Wars movie, and they have never seen the original Star Wars trilogy. So I started watching Natalie Gold when she started reacting to the original Star Wars A New Hope. She's probably her 20s or something like that, but there's a whole slew of millennials who have never seen those movies, and I like to watch her reactions to those older movies. Fourth Wall Reactions, another reactor. Tim Pool, Air Force Proud in 95. He does a lot of gaming for Microsoft Flight Simulator. He's also a real pilot in real life, and some of those videos can get to be really funny. Daisy Cousins, who I enjoy very much, one of your countrymen. Drop of Truth. I like Daisy Cousins very much, partly because of the content of videos, which I generally agree with, and partly because Daisy Cousins Everybody says I'm slut shaming, but I'm sorry. Daisy Cousins is one of the few individuals that you ever see who doesn't dress like a slut all the time. You know, she knows how to look kind of classy. PragerU, I watched some of theirs. I talked about that. Seska Says, beautiful Jessica from Seska Says. She is, among other things, going through and reacting to all of the Doctor Who episodes from the very beginning. You know, she's got something like 20 years worth of Doctor Who episodes to get through. No, more than, yeah, it's about 20 years to get through. Critical Drinker. Love Critical Drinker. He does some great reviews. One I've got here, he posted 9 hours ago, was Watchmen from 2009. Was it really that bad? Which I don't think it was. Emma Blackery, she's back to doing gaming now, but she's done some really funny ones. If you want to see a really good one of hers, search for Emma Blackery, EMMA BLACERY, and Plastic Jeans. They make plastic jeans. They're not really jeans, they're plastic, but they fit like jeans. They're see-through plastic. Who would wear these things except for Emma Blackery and people like her who are doing it for a laugh? And watch that video. It's very funny. Screen Rant, I like a bunch of the stuff that they do. Movie Central, which is another one that does movies that maybe I've seen, maybe I haven't. A lot of stuff that tends to be like mockbusters. That's stuff that was oftentimes done by a company called The Asylum. What they'll do is they'll find a movie that's really popular, and they'll come out with something that's got a title that's just a little bit different, but the cover art for DVDs and posters and stuff that you see on the web look very, very similar to whatever it is that they're copying from, and they call it a mockbuster. It's a blockbuster, but it's not. They're mocking it. Cinema Sins, which just posted Everything Wrong with Gone With It in 20 minutes or less. How It Should Have Ended, which just did Pokemon Red and Blue. They're doing games because they're starting to run out of movies. That SFX guy, who's a guy who does special effects, sound effects. Some of them will occasionally wind up on the show. If you watch any of them where I'm doing the background from the bridge of the original Starship Enterprise, the sound effect that I got for that is a stereo effect that he created. Dr. Rashid A. Buttar, he's a guy who has different perspectives on that virus that I cannot name without my videos being deranked or my channel being deleted or elsewhere. Screen Rant, some of the things that they do I like, particularly the pitch meetings. Jennifer Molesky, I've forgotten why I watch her, but some of her videos I like. Isaac Arthur, guy is really intelligent, does some fairly long videos sometimes, but about science fictional things. And amazingly, he does it with just voiceover and a lot of good editing, and he has a slight speech impediment. And it's amazing to me because he's got, right now, 14 hours ago he posted something. He's got 39,000 viewers. He's got hundreds of thousands of subs. Just a great guy. And then there's Woke. And again, I talked about those guys a little bit. I do not like their perspective, their worldview at all, but they will constantly show, here it is. They streamed it 18 hours ago, day 63, live protests. They will stream multiple live protests inside of their videos. You can have as many as 6 of them sometimes maybe more, but I've seen at least 6 of them from time to time. Good place because I like live streamers. I like people who sit down, point their cams, walk through the crowd, and just shut up and let you look and see what you can see. I like those guys a lot better. Special mention here to Neon Visual. NEONVISUAL. Awesome guy. Does some amazing art. He is a graphics artist. When I was teaching, it was about around the time that the Doctor Who 50th anniversary special was happening. He was doing many different versions of a Doctor Who opening. And I would show them at the beginning of my classes, my IT classes, or I'd come in usually 15 minutes before the class started. And then I would show these videos because I would say to my students, this is what you can do if you are really talented and you are able to, just one computer one computer. This is the amazing. He's got a 4K version of a replication that he did of the Star Trek Voyager intro. He's got a 4K version of the Star Trek Deep Space Nine intro, and he is now working on what he's calling the Star Trek The Next Generation Season 8 intro. This is going to involve the Enterprise E, and the music, I've heard it. It comes, instead of being a replica that they did for Next Generation, it's going to be the actual music that they can't use from Star Trek The Motion Picture. And it's going to be in 4K. It's going to be awesome. I just know it's going to be awesome. So those are some of the guys that I watch pretty regularly. There's some others in here that pop up from time to time, but that are not quite as... Oh, I should definitely mention Medusa Cascade. Medusa Cascade is another reactor. She's working her way through all of the episodes of Doctor Who. She's one of those people. It's really interesting to watch Medusa Cascade. She's one of those people who makes it solely on the fact that she has a crap ton of charisma. She's an attractive woman, don't get me wrong, but unlike me, where I put a lot of effort into what my appearance looks like, because I have to, she doesn't put a ton of effort into her appearance and how she does things in her presentation. She just is magnetic. She's a lot of fun to watch. So those are some of the ones that I watch here. Drop of Truth mentioning Captain Marvel only made the money it did because it was a shoehorn between Infinity War and Endgame. I think that may be to some extent right. Super Cruise 63 says the Hulkster, what fun he was to watch. Yeah, I'll never forget him in real life because he, like I say, just tons of charisma even when you watch him on TV. But in real life, oh my God, I'll never forget. I watched him and I analyzed some of how he was working the crowd. He was in a cage match. A tag team match. It was him and Hillbilly Jim, if you remember him, against Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik. So you know which one you're supposed to root for. So he would be in there, and Hillbilly Jim would be getting the snot beat out of him. It went back and forth. Sometimes Hillbilly Jim was doing okay, but eventually he'd start getting the snot beat out of him. Hulk would not immediately tag in. Hulk would turn to the audience, like this side of the crowd. Should I tag in? And then this side of the crowd. Should I tag in? This side. He'd go all the way around and would only tag in after this entire crowd of 20,000 people was screaming for him to tag in. Just really knew how to work the crowd. I couldn't do it myself, but my God, he knew. God, I'm way behind here. Drop of Truth asks, have I watched Netflix, Marvel's Netflix Luke Cage? I have not. There's a lot of the Netflix stuff that I haven't watched. I have to go to various websites to do that because I don't have a Netflix account. Often tell people certain IT skills are a pathway to some abilities that some might find unnatural. So I have to go around and find those. And there's only so many hours in the day. Yes, Mr. Plinkett eviscerated Star Trek Picard. He absolutely did. And it was worth eviscerating. Thanks very much, Proxoid, about the love my mask. Put it in my merch store. I couldn't do that. It's something you can get on Amazon. The merch store stuff I have is linked to Teespring. They don't have stuff like that. But yeah, I think it's a very good mask. Go get it. It costs like $25 with the shipping. And Marshall is in. Hi, Marshall. Let's see. Just got back from peacefully protesting. Bruises everywhere and a bad case of smoke inhalation. Yes, well, when you peacefully protest, that's going to happen. Let's see. That's in Colorado. Now, everywhere now. You're way ahead of me again. Yes, you are. Not a hard thing to do when I start going off. Yes. YouTube channel Robot Head is good. Haven't seen that one. I'll take your word for that. An Aussie like you. He also destroyed Brie Larson's YouTube channel better than anyone. Yep. Good night, Jeanette. Hope you saw me say good night before you had disappeared. But good night. See you next week. Probably going to be on maybe another 45 minutes here. Just for Marshall because he showed up after I did the big long rant on it. I'll put on my mask again. You've seen the pictures of this in my Facebook, Marshall has. But this is what my mask looks like.
if I don't bump the mic with it. Well, this is what my mask looks like. One side, the other side. And this actually works. I mentioned a couple of times already. I went to the dentist to get some work done to the tune of about $1,000. But I went to the dentist to get some work done. And they're not letting you just walk into the dentist office. You have to sit in your car outside the dentist office and call a phone number that they have on a big sign to check in. Then they send this kid out, and he basically says, you got COVID, you got any other symptoms, you know anybody, been around anybody, have you been tested, etc. The answers to which are always no. And then they will take you in at some point. Well, I pulled this thing out, and I was wearing it while he was asking me the stupid questions. And he said, does that mask cover your mouth and your face? And I said, it sure does. You absolutely covers my mouth and my nose perfectly. It's fine. He said, well, guess that's okay. So I went into the dentist with this on. Everybody in the office, hygienists, other dentists, wanted to look at it. I got people who took pictures of it. Just today, I went to the grocery store and had somebody take a selfie with me of it, as well as take an actual just outright picture. This is my passive-aggressive, and if you want to go back and watch this on demand, you can see me rant about how I think that this is my response to my governor's stupid pronouncements about where and how we need masks all the time now. So,
drop my vocal pitch a little bit. Okay, let me do this down. I know it's hard to. I kicked my level way up on my microphone so that it can be heard through that. So I appreciate that. Let's see. Jeanette, yes, good night from Drop Truth. Absolutely. So, yeah, I went through some of the YouTube channels that I watch. There's a couple over here that don't post as frequently. James Von Maxwell, not quite sure. I don't remember all the time what some of these people do. Tony Heller, I'm subbed to. Thunderfoot. Thunderfoot's a great guy to be subbed to. It's really fun when he debunks people and debunks ideas. Watching him debunk flat earthers is a lot of fun. Watching him debunk the Hyperloop was a kick. He's got multiple videos about that. That's a fun one. Called Submit a Class this minute. Oh, Gray still plays. Gray still plays. He uploads some game video every day. But Gray still plays. What he does is he does stuff where he intentionally tries to either break the game, do things that the programmers probably didn't intend, or do stuff that because of the way things work in the game, the mechanics, it will cause unintended side effects. The best ones he does are when he does stuff with Sims. Because he just lets the Sims run on autopilot. So, like, he'll take the Sims and put them into some kind of house that has virtually all swimming pools. And for some bizarre reason, if you just let your Sims go and you don't do anything with them, they won't eat, despite the fact that there's places to eat. They won't clean up their food. They'll just leave it laying around. They won't go to the bathrooms, even though there are bathrooms. They won't, they'll just crap themselves and pee themselves all the time, get embarrassed. Sometimes they die of embarrassment. And then if you get in the water, if you get in a pool, you can just be absolutely certain that they're going to drown. Sometimes, like one time you put them into a house that was mostly pools, and it's just a question of how long does it take for them to drown. Which sim doesn't drown? Or in that case, too, it made sure there was food, made sure there was, all that stuff. Sometimes they'll set themselves on fire, because they'll be working in the kitchen and start a kitchen fire. If you let your Sims run on autopilot, they will just kill each other. And sometimes he'll do stuff like one video. He got a mod where the Sims could hate animals. So he put in like 50 Sims in one house that all hated animals, and then he made 18 copies of his cat. Just to see how long. Oddly enough, most of them died because they wouldn't eat. Despite the fact that there was all kinds of food in the house, they didn't eat, and they starved to death. And then one will die just right there in the middle, and a bunch of mothers will congregate, and they'll get upset, and sometimes they'll die of being upset. If you just let these guys run on autopilot, it's only a matter of time until they all die, apparently. I haven't watched it, so I don't know. Yeah, but draw my mask a little more in character. Yeah, I actually thought about getting a Darth Vader helmet with a voice changer, but I thought, you know, this kind of works better for me. I like the spikes. Other people I watch, Gallifrey Girls. Again, it's a youngish pair of girls, older than my kids were, but I like watching them because they're going through Doctor Who from 2005 on, and they're also going through Star Trek. Star Trek: The Next Generation. Unfortunately, those a-holes at CBS have flagged every single one of their Star Trek: The Next Generation video reactions, despite the fact that it's clearly within the length allowed. They're very careful about that. It is clearly, for not intended, it's clearly fair use, but they flagged every single one of them. So now their reactions are them just talking about it before and after. You can go over, however, to their Patreon and watch the entire reaction. But, God, CBS, you're so stupid. Not only did you do that, but believe it or not, CBS actually accidentally flagged one of their own videos. They had a virtual, Comic-Con panel on something. I didn't watch it. What was the point? I hate the stuff they're coming out with now. But they had a virtual Comic-Con panel with practically no views and a lot of downlikes. And CBS managed to flag that and get it taken down. They flagged themselves. Gotta love those bots from CBS, boy. They can flag themselves. Love that. Used to do that with virtual pets. Drama Truth says, you mean see what it takes to kill them in bizarre ways? Yeah, that's why I like Gray Still Plays. He does that. It's fun. Screen Rant. Computer History Museum is a lot of fun to watch for me as an IT guy, because they go through and they'll interview people who had something important that was a contribution to the computing world. And I knew about happening at some point in my career, but then you listen to these guys and you find out, okay, here's what actually went on behind the scenes. I like those guys. Movie Central, that's another good one if you want to watch movies that you won't necessarily find elsewhere, sometimes mockbusters, sometimes movies that are just obscure or in the public domain. Translator Fails. Oh, God, I love Translator Fails. That's a hysterical one. It's a woman who, again, a charismatic, young, attractive, and female, an extraordinary singer, just really good singer. But she'll do translator fail songs, where she'll take a song, a popular good song, run it through multiple layers of Google Translate. Start in English, then go to Farsi, and all kinds of them, and then back to English. And then sing the song with those fracked up lyrics, and that's hysterical to watch. Uncle Rob, who hasn't posted a video in 2 years until yesterday. Uncle Rob used to do ones where he'd blow things up, just stuff you should never do in real life, and a lot of fun. Computing Forever, I like to watch them. He's Brit, I believe, Irish, I believe, who does commentary. He also does actually sometimes talk about computing. Future Zone is another one I like for movies. Project Veritas. Gotta love Project Veritas, although their videos do sometimes get banned or taken down. But they have an account that mirrors them over on BitChute. Always say, do support your alternative social media and alternative video sites. BitChute is working on doing streaming. When that happens, I will be... As I mentioned, next week I'm hoping to be able to simul stream to YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook simultaneously. The moment that BitChute has their streaming in place, I'll be also streaming to them. Oh man, here's a weird one. You got to be a libertarian to like this, but Pink Flame of Liberty. Weird sort of. Sorry, I know that you're kind of on my side here. But the pink hair doesn't do it for me. Sorry. Let's see. Drop 2 says Marvel Comics are now releasing the New Warriors as a trade paperback on October 27th. They dare release it as individual comics. I dare not, I suppose. Yeah, well, it's such a dumb idea. Yeah. Drop 2 says Computing Forever is Irish. His name is Dave Cullen. Yeah, he has 2 channels. Has a YouTube channel of that name. Yeah, and I'm subscribed to both. On that. Again, that woke.net channel. I just can't say, that's a good one. You want to watch that because of the live streams. That he's doing what I tried to do for a while, which is have multiple live streams from different sources where they don't talk very much. They just let it run. Sometimes they will get in and do things like, chat. And at that point, you're dealing with nothing but just, leftist gibberish. But the protest parts of it are really very good to watch. Just scrolling down to see if I've got any others here. There's another millennial that I started watching because she had never watched. There's so many of them. You can find them. If you just search in YouTube for, watch Star Wars first time. Oh, my God. It started to get popular. There are so many millennials who have never seen a Star Wars movie and have never seen the original trilogy. And so they're going back and watching them, and I like watching these guys because I get kick out of the fact that they go, wow, this is a really good movie. And it really stands up over time. I thought it was going to, 1977, I thought it was going to be, technically dated and awful. And no, it's a really good movie, and they go through and they're surprised when, it's not surprised when it's Luke, I am your father. That's such a thing that's been embedded in our culture now that you can't go into it and not know that. But they'll always be surprised when Luke gets his hand cut off. It's anyway. I'm watching Alyska, Alyska, for the same reasons. Media Zealot. He does stuff like Advanced Sci-Fi Civilizations Too Stupid to Really Exist, and he goes through a lot of them. The Daleks. If you really think about it, man, that's just stupid. The Klingons. If you really think about it, they're a civilization that's too stupid to really exist. Let's see. Blazer101, hi, how are you doing? Trump says Trump wants to cancel the elections for 1 year due to voter fraud, but the Democrats are calling him a dictator if he does. I would have to look and see what he maybe actually said. Could Trump delay the floats election delay? I'd have to look and see exactly what was said and what and where and when and how. Nothing you see in the press is real. Nothing. He can't do that. I don't think, it wouldn't be possible. It's unconstitutional. That's one thing you'd never get away with. But you do have to worry about the voter fraud. You absolutely have to worry about voter fraud. He can't do that. It's not possible. There's no way. And I have to wonder, since all I'm seeing here is, all kinds of stuff about that maybe he didn't actually say it the way they said he did. I would have to see it in context with the beginning and the end, and all of the stuff that he may have said in between, because the press will grab onto one little statement and blow it out of context. So I'm not sure. Hey, Shadow Man, how are you doing? Got called into work from home. Yeah, that's fun. True says Media Zealot is great. Yeah, even Doctor Who, Sylvester McCoy parodied them because they couldn't go upstairs. Yeah, then they started levitating. Yeah, Marshall says Trump didn't say he was going to do it. He asked if it should be done. It was a question. Yeah, that's what they do all the time. They take stuff out of context. Like when he was that thing where they said that he was saying you should eat bleach. Well, no. What he was saying was he was talking to his doctor next to him. He said, it'd be nice if we could do the same sort of deal here. He didn't say you should go out and drink bleach. They do that all the time. So again, I'd have to see the thing in context, to get the full of it. But I find it very hard to believe that he'd actually say that. In any case, no, you can't. You can't. You do have to worry about voter fraud. Marshall put out something on Facebook about how it would be fairly easy to do if you were a postal worker. I just look back at the 2016 election. I was living in Des Moines at the time. Actually, a suburb outside of it. But I was living in Des Moines at the time. And I used to listen pretty frequently to a local radio talk show host named Simon Conway. You can find him on Facebook if you like. He's a great guy. I certainly suggest listening to him if you can. It's Simon_1776 is who he is on Facebook. I used to listen to him all the time. And the thing about a market like Des Moines is that sometimes they will take anybody who calls. It's not like Rush Limbaugh where you call and you get a busy signal 53 times in a row and never get in. You call WHO radio in Des Moines and there's some good chance that you'll actually get on. Well, Simon had just moved to Des Moines from Florida, and he got sent 2 absentee ballots, one from Iowa and one from Florida. Clearly, and he said so himself, he could have voted twice in that election had he wanted to. And in fact, I called him and I said, hey, send me yours. I want to do it just to prove it can be done. And he was like, no, that's in violation of federal law. I don't want to get into that. I said, yeah, I understand that. But, if you change your mind, send it to me. I want to prove that it can be done. So clearly, it can be done. We don't know how frequently it happens. We don't know these things. There is no way to quantify it. And any government agency that tells you that they can quantify it can't possibly know what they're talking about, because clearly it's possible to do. And we don't know how many times it happens. Maybe it's just that was a one-off. Maybe it was weird for him. Maybe there's lots of people like that. People who've moved out of state, but they're still on the voter rolls for some of their state. And so they're sent multiple ballots. Who knows? We don't know. There is no way to quantify it. And the possible voter fraud that can happen via postal is, again, as an IT security guy, I look at it paranoid from a security perspective, and I go, no, my God, the things you could do. The stuff that you could do to commit voter fraud. The only way to make sure at this point that your vote is anything like counted is to show up in person and vote. Even if it means you wait an hour and a half in a line, 6 feet apart, it doesn't matter. Show up and vote. That's the only way to make sure. The rest of the time, who knows what can happen? Who knows what can happen? Drop Truth asks, how did leftists like Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi keep getting voted back into power? Well, let me tell you something. I explained this to my semi-cousin, or whoever he was, when I was out here this week. There is a difference between personality types. I've worked or had exposure to 3 different types of professions in my life. One was cattle ranching, and again, just grounding in that because I used to spend time at my grandparents' cattle ranch, and it's where this room exists. One was acting, because a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, I was once an actor, and IT. And they have 3 radically different personality types. The people that work out on a ranch that is very far away from everything, as I showed, I think it was last week, they have to be extremely individualistic, extremely self-reliant. They must be. The reality is anything out there, whether it's just checking your cattle to see if they're okay, performing veterinary work because it needs to be done, something goes wrong with your cattle, or if you're having to, do mechanical work on your vehicles or your, heavy equipment, which is necessary to do that stuff out there, you have to do all that stuff yourself. Now, sometimes you'll get into a place where you can call a neighbor and say, hey, I need some help. Can you come help me? But you have to do it yourself. You don't have anyone else who can do it for you. If it needs to be done, whatever it is, you have to do it, or it don't get done. So it requires a level of individualism. When you get into the cities, then you start to see things like specialization. I know a lot about IT. I'm the guy to call if you want to know something about IT or need something IT-wise done. I'm a guy to call. What I don't know is mechanics for my car. I mean, I know some of the basics. If I get into trouble on the road, I know some of the things to look for. I keep tools and stuff in the back just in case for some minor stuff. When you get into anything complicated, Like, for example, I know how I've got my Jeep. It's got the way that the hood hooks down. It's kind of funky, and it's broken on one side. I know how to fix it, but the problem is the damn thing. You might need to pull the engine just to get to the stupid bolts, and so I'm gonna have to call my local mechanic and have him do it for me. Anytime something goes wrong with my car that isn't beyond a certain point, I have to call somebody else to do it. And that's how things are in things like cities. You get more and more reliant on other people because it isn't necessary for you to do it. So cities naturally tend to become more socialist because you're not dealing with individualists anymore. You're dealing with people who are reliant on other people. And different professions attract different kinds of people. You know, when you get into the arts of any kind, it attracts nothing but socialists and communists. That's just a reality. You know, when you hear about people in Hollywood that are, not being able to work because they're conservatives, well, they're an extraordinary minority because their profession does not attract conservatives. And then you get into IT, people tend to be, kind of on the introverted side for the most part. Just different kinds of, but again, when you get into big cities, in fact, I'd suggest any city for over about 500,000. You start to get very socialist in terms of their local policies. And so when you get into people like, Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi, well, the reason they keep getting voted back in is because they're socialists and so are their constituents. It's why you should have the Electoral College, because you don't want 8 or 9 very large, very socialist cities deciding who your president is. It's just a bad idea. Marcia says 1 of 13 different vote outcomes altering attacks. Yes, your state's SBI was totally shocked at some of them. They had never considered some of the attack vectors. Yeah, there are so many ways. There are so many ways that you could do voter fraud via mail. Does it happen? I don't know, but neither do they. There's no way to quantify it because they've never considered it. As Marcia says, they never considered it. No way to quantify it. Maybe it happens a lot. Maybe it doesn't happen at all. Maybe this next time around, you'd get a postal worker who decided that he didn't want Trump to win and screw things over, and it would be easy. Be easy to do it. Nancy Pelosi is $140,000 per year. It has a multi-million-dollar house. Did she take money from North Korea? No. She does it. They all do. You take speaking gigs. You take bribes. Campaign contributions. That's how you make your money. It's not on the, these guys can get a speaking gig for, $500,000 per speaking gig. And usually that's being paid because whomever you're speaking for wants to bribe you. It's just that simple. They get a lot of bribes. Sometimes they call them campaign contributions. Sometimes they're just getting money from elsewhere, but that's how they can be multimillionaires. It's not it's not doing anything bad necessarily. It's just doing what they always do, which is take bribes in some form or another. Whether it's from North Korea, who the hell knows? Probably not. They can get bribes from Americans just as easily. Let's see. Shadowman says, yeah, it's their constituencies. Maxine Waters has been in politics since she was a teenager. She was out congresswoman. Yeah, your congressman. And she is a fraud. Yeah. Why are Democrats so ugly? Are they demon possessed? No, it's, no. I don't get it. The Democrats, I don't get it either. You can see a lot of times, I don't know. I don't know why they tend to be, not that attractive in the universe. I don't know. Let's see. Shadowman says, you're describing me exactly. IT pro, but when it comes to mechanical, brain dead. Yeah, that's how everybody is. Everybody in cities is a specialist. They depend on others in order to survive. And so the politics in cities tends to become more socialist because of that. They're not individualists the way you are when you're out at a place like this. Driver 2 says, when you drive into central Australia, there are some roads where you may not see another vehicle for many days. In the 70s and 80s, U.S. tourists often died in the outback. Yeah, there are places like that in the U.S. too. Most people don't realize they exist. If you could get even farther into the bush than what I showed you here. This is pretty far into the bush, but you could go farther. Oh, God, you could go farther. Absolutely. Most people in the U.S. wouldn't believe that what I showed last week exists. Driver 2 says, you're fine with computers, but far better at mechanics and building. Your dad is a master carpenter, spent half of my life working in construction. Good for you. Again, something else I can't do. You ask me to build a wall, I'm screwed. Anything more complicated than that, forget it. It's just not going to happen. Driver 2 says bribes, i.e. political lobbying donations. Yes, they're political contributions, but I like to just call them what they outright are, which is bribes. Marshall says some methods of attack, referring to the potential voter fraud, are completely undetectable until all of your voter data is available and subject to some really nasty statistical analysis months after the election is over. Yeah. When Trump complains about potential voter fraud, yeah, there's all kinds of possibilities for voter fraud. Would it happen? Does it happen? Can't tell. Just that one thing, from that one talk show host in Iowa, that one thing proves to me that it's possible. I have a mail-in ballot somewhere around on my desk for something. I'm almost half curious. If I send in my mail-in ballot for president and then showed up at my polling place, what would happen? I wonder what would happen just right here in Lincoln, Nebraska. What would happen if I did that? I wonder what would happen. Yeah, I'd be violating federal law by doing it, but I wonder if it'd be possible. Because everybody's getting these. Everybody in Nebraska is getting these freaking mail-in ballots. What would happen if I sent it in and then I went to the polling place? What would happen? I don't know. Let's see. Drop says postal votes. Who counts them? The same people who count the ones in when you go to the polling places, I assume. But there's ways to hijack them in order to make them invalid. You can make them invalid. A postal worker could make a lot of mail-in votes invalid if they wanted to, so that they were thrown away rather than being counted. That's possible to do. That's one vector of attack. Mail-in voting is a bad idea. Voting over the web is a bad idea. I mean, there's ways to secure that, but they'll never do it. The government is too stupid. They'll never figure out how to do it. But mail-in voting, bad idea. Voting over the internet, bad idea. The only way that you can be absolutely certain that your vote is going to be counted is if you show up at the polling place and you vote. Period. Shadowman says, I got 2 mail-in ballots for people who do not live in my home. I called the post office to correct this yesterday. I bet you could have voted twice. I bet you could have. Drop 2 was asked, are the Democrats still pushing for illegal immigrants, refugees, to votes? Oh, yeah, of course they are. Of course they are. They want everybody. They want 16-year-olds to vote, for Christ's sake. The people who eat Tide Pods. Yeah, they're desperate to have anybody vote. Anybody whatsoever, because they think if they give them the vote, they'll get them to vote for Democrats. And I think that'd certainly be true of illegals. And I'm sorry, I'm going to call them illegal aliens because that's what they've always been, and that's what they are. They're illegal aliens. I'm not going to be politically correct about it, but yes, they're always after any new demographic that they can possibly get, because they figured if they get them, if they say, hey, you can vote, then it's going to be there. They'll get that demographic. Let's see. Blazer 101. Bill, Democrats want a vaccine really bad for the coronavirus. So, I said it again. I said it. Darn it. I can't say the name of that virus because if you do, you risk being deranked, your channel being disabled or deleted. I'm sorry. I said that again. Sorry, you gods of YouTube. Please forgive me for saying that. Why not make that H word that's also a bad word into a vaccine? Vaccine and a treatment are really very, very different. A vaccine, how to describe this? imagine it like this: a virus has a shape to it. Now, an antivirus will go in and match that shape, and it basically, connects in the places where it's supposed to connect, and that will cause the virus cell to die, or at least become inert. So that's different from having a treatment. A treatment is after you've already got it and they don't have anything that they can put in there to go and grab and match. And see, a vaccine really only works in advance. What you're doing is you're sending dead versions of a specifically shaped kind of cell, basically, into your bloodstream so that your body will then produce those antibodies that know how to connect with it and kill it. So that if you get live ones, then your antibodies will already be there to connect and kill it. But that's different from having a treatment like that H-word one, which YouTube also doesn't like. You can't just turn that into a vaccine. A vaccine is a preventative thing. It won't help anybody that already has it. It's only to prevent. So they're really two different things. You can't turn one into the other. That H-word one may be a good treatment. I don't know. The science is rapidly evolving on that, and some people say it is, and some people don't think so. I always default to very simply, do what your doctor says. Don't listen to anybody on the internet. Do what your doctor says. They're going to know what's best for you more than anybody that you see on the internet. It's like going on to WebMD and trying to self-diagnose. Don't do that. Don't do that. You'll get it wrong. Let your doctor tell you what to do. Let's see. Drop of Truth says, I show your driver's license when voting. Well, we don't even have to do that. We don't have to do that. We don't have to show any form of ID whatsoever when voting. That's also probably a bad thing. It's not mandatory, yeah. Shadowman says, if you get more of them, those 2 phantom voters are going to vote for Trump. Well, just be aware that's definitely a violation of federal law. Keep that in mind if you're going to do something like that. Use crown disease. Yes, that's what we've been sort of saying during my stream here, is crown disease, rather than the name of that virus, that if you speak it, you can be deranked, your channel can be disabled, or it can be entirely deleted by YouTube. Shadowman says the Constitution forbids mandatory acts which could violate the integrity of the body, and that means vaccines too. I did a rant at the beginning of this. You can go back and watch it on demand, when I talk about we have just given over control of a lot of things in our lives and fortunes, to government. These masks are never going to go away. They will be with us for the rest of our lives. They'll be with the rest of my life, my children's lives, my grandchildren, if I have them sometime, great-grandchildren. After I'm dead, these masks will still be with us. They're never going to go anywhere, because we handed control over this to power-mad, sociopathic narcissists, and they will never give that power back. Never. The only way that you ever get power back from your government is either revolt or collapse. The government can collapse, or you can be conquered. Those are the only ways that you ever get power back. Revolt, collapse, or conquer. They will never give it back. It is just like the airport security theater that we have now. It's useless, it's pointless, it doesn't do a damn thing, and it will never change, because they will never give that power back, not ever. Mexican beer disease, anything at all. Yeah, transporter psychosis, Marshall says, Democrats want more voters on their plantation. Yes, create dependency in a population, economic slavery. Same thing, just evolves, that they have always used. Yes. And the transporter psychosis, crown disease, we have handed over an enormous amount of control of our lives to power-mad, sociopathic narcissists. And that's just all there is to it. And they will never give it back. Never. They will never give that power back. Let's see. Drop of Truth says, Shadowman, is your constitution still valid? Yours in Australia is now badly corrupted. Common law is no longer practiced. Well, we never really had common law, exactly. I mean, some of our law is based on that, but really what our Constitution has always said is federal government can do this limited number of things, and it really is limited, and the rest is up to the states or the people themselves. And it's a really small number of things. What it really amounts to is we're going to make sure that the states don't do things like tax each other, and we're going to make sure that if we have a war, there's a united front. Beyond that, nothing. That's why there's no federal murder. There's no such thing as a federal murder. Those are local crimes that are taken care of by individual states. Crimes like that, murder, rape, robbery, etc., those are not federal crimes. They never are. Those are things that are handled at the state level. What's happened is, over the last 2 to 3 generations, as we have ceased teaching civics or anything like constitutional history or history in general, our people have decided that the federal government can do anything, that the president is essentially an unelected king who can do anything, which is why when they say something like he said he wants to put off the elections, and they talk about that as if that's something the president could actually do. The president isn't a king. He can't do that stuff. I mean, even if it was true that he said that, and apparently it's not, he can't do it. He's not a king. But we have been teaching our young that he is, and that any president is. And things like the Paris Accords, right? That's not something the president can do. The president is supposed to negotiate a treaty, which is then ratified by the Senate. There was no treaty negotiated there. That was totally unconstitutional. We were never in the Paris Accords, not really, because we had no treaty. It was not a treaty negotiated by the president and then ratified by the Senate. Didn't happen. There was no treaty there whatsoever. That was never valid. And for the president, any president, to make any kind of agreement like that, and they do it all the time, is totally unconstitutional. It's totally extra-constitutional. The only thing they can do is negotiate a treaty that is then ratified by the Senate. If they make any other kind of deal, it's irrelevant, or should be. But now we've taught people, no presidents can just do whatever the hell they want. Just ridiculous. Drop 2 says, now a judge has granted the ACLU a temporary restraining order banning Portland police from live streaming protests and riots. The move further aids Antifa and other criminals in remaining anonymous. Yeah. Why? Why am I not even shocked? But that's just Portland police live streaming. There are lots and lots of people who are doing live streams that are embedded in those crowds. The one that I like to watch, I mentioned it, I went through some of the channels that I talked through that I actually sub to. You can watch that later on demand. But one of them that I watch is a channel called Woke, or woke.net. And I don't like their politics. They suck. They are all, like the one that they recently streamed 19 hours ago. Let me see if I can find it. Was entitled, I think, Day 62 or so of the protests, and it's always subtitled No Justice, No Peace. They're very leftist, but what they do have is multiple streams in windows inside of their stream. You ignore their politics and just watch what's going on. I like those guys. And that, if they made a thing about Portland police, it isn't going to have the slightest impact on woke.net. They're still going to show things. Got to ask, would Jesus Christ wear a mask? Oh, he wouldn't have to. He wouldn't have to. By definition, I don't think he'd have to worry about a virus, at least not this one. Dropper Tuesday wouldn't have to. Yeah, he'd destroy the disease. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Just for the benefit of a couple of people who wandered in since I did my long rant on the subject. Here's the mask that I wear.
Sorry, I have to, the pause there was me turning the level up on my microphone because I have to speak through a bunch of plastic, and I'm trying to be a little bit, a little bit more, talking a little bit more clear. Oops, and I bumped the microphone with one of these stupid things. You can see here. And this is, in fact, the mask that I wear in public. This is the one that I wear when I'm going to the stores, when I went to the dentist the other day. This is the one that I always wear. And it actually qualifies because
the inside of this thing, you may not be able to see it, but the inside, it does cover my mouth and it covers my nose, and all of my breathing actually does go through this tube. It actually goes through this stupid tube. Now, the stupid tube attaches to nothing. It's just a flat piece. But it does the same thing as a regular mask would. Once my dentist gave his sign off on it, I was like, okay, this is what I'm wearing. I get people who from time to time ask if they can take a selfie with me or take a picture of it. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. If you're going to be forced to wear a mask, wear something like that. Do it in style. Do it passive aggressively as a way to fight back against the man. UK is currently getting about 250 plus immigrants a day on the south coast. How's it going on my southern border? I don't know what the southern border is currently at. I haven't paid a hell of a lot of attention to it. The press stopped paying attention to it, and my impression was that what happened was the president got serious with Mexico about our trade with them. Basically said to them, if you don't stop letting people come through your country into ours, we are going to stop trading with you. And that immediately got them to do the right thing, which is not let all these people go up through their border. Because what had been happening was they were coming up from Central and South America, as far away as that, and wandering all the way through Mexico to get to the U.S. border. Mexico could have interdicted them and didn't. They were being complicit. And so when the president said, you're going to stop that, you're going to start interdicting these people, or we are going to stop trading with you. And Mexico relies on U.S. trade. Most people don't know is that there's some really great parts of Mexico, don't get me wrong, but a huge chunk of the country is a third world nation. No good water, stuff like that. And the drug cartels run chunks of it. So if the U.S. did not trade with it, Mexico would be in deep, deep trouble. So I think what happened was the problem kind of went away because Trump said, no, we're not going to trade with you anymore unless you start interdicting these people. And that's what they did. So I don't know exactly what it looks like on the southern border right now, but I think it's quite a lot better than it used to be. In any case, the press stopped paying attention. If it was bad or worse, they wouldn't. They would keep paying attention to it. They called it, they called the detention centers down there concentration camps, which they weren't. They weren't concentration camps. When you're being totally flooded and conditions are not going to be good when you have that many people. But once you get Mexico interdicting them and they stop coming up, probably going to get better. So I don't know for sure what it is, but 250 plus. I think we're probably getting more than that on our southern border. 250 because it's a 2,000-mile plus border, most of which can't be patrolled or anything. It's just it goes through mountain ranges and all kinds of stuff. I'm sure we're seeing more than that, but it's not the thousands upon thousands that were showing up because Mexico started interdicting them. So. Well, I'll tell you what, it is a couple of minutes away from 3 whole hours here, so I'm probably going to drop myself off. Thank you very much for everyone that watched. I love my audience. I love you guys watching me. If you missed any portion of it, particularly my rant when I was in my mask, then feel free to go back and watch me on demand after this video is over. Talk to you later, Trop of Truth. I'm going to be going to myself. Stay safe and well as you. So that is about all that I've got to say about that. I would love to keep the conversation going, so please leave your comments, questions, and nasty remarks. I'll do my best to respond to you. So thanks for watching. Love my audience. And that's all the time that we have today for this episode of Tales from SYL Ranch, where everyone is entitled to my opinion. And I'm Bill Stone.
Ultimate power in this world has always been one simple thing: the control and manipulation of minds.